Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 184 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield.
And I'm Matt Kyle.
And we are here to bring you the biggest and the best in video games for the week. It has been a slow week.
Such as it is.
Such as it is. I definitely had to work to get this episode together today.
If only this was a politics podcast, we'd be
we have
set.
plenty to talk about, yeah. Unfortunately, it's not. We're talking about games, but I think we do have a good show. I think we're going to have some good discussions today. Couple games to talk about. One big game to talk about we're going to get to at the end of the show, although you didn't have a ton of time to play it yet.
Yeah. And we've already kind of talked about it.
We have. We're not going to spoil it, but yeah, we have talked about it before. We do want to do
More of a status report.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. A couple things. GameFace is up on Google Play. All you Androiders out there, all you Androids, can get the podcast. Again, it's on a delay. I think both iTunes and Google Play are on a 4-day delay from the show being live, and then, as you know, our YouTube version goes up like 7 days later. So if you're watching the show on YouTube and you like to get it earlier, and maybe you just listen to it on YouTube anyway, you can get it earlier on iTunes and Google Play. We just published an episode of Ask Shane Anything where I kind of walk you guys through how to set up your podcast feeds or Sifted content. If you've had problems or you're a little confused about it, watch that, and it should help you out big time. Let's see. We have a pleasant surprise for you guys today. So Matt Kyle has he built a new home some time ago. As you guys know, we did the show in there for quite a bit. And he's been working on a project at his home all this time. How long have you lived in your house now?
About a year and a half.
So
I bought it almost exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then you didn't move in for a bit.
No, I had to do some work.
Yep. Well, since then, Matt
knocked out a fireplace or two.
Yeah.
Because you don't need 4 fireplaces in LA.
You don't really need one.
No, when we first moved here, that was one of my big things. Was like, I'm like, can you find me an apartment without a fireplace, wasting good TV wall space? Basically, I mean,
yeah.
What do you do? When I was looking for the house, one of my favorite moments was I'd been complaining about that every house I saw, and then at one point I was talking about like doing that or changing the fireplace or like, and one of the selling agent is like, come to this other house. So I'm seeing that they do something with a projection screen. Maybe you wouldn't have to change anything. I'm like, all right. So we went up, and it was like this $7.5 million tri-level mansion up in the Hollywood Hills. You could count the rivets in the Hollywood sign from the back deck. It was it had an Olympic-sized pool in the back. It was like a BoJack Horseman house, basically.
Oh my gosh!
But they had like this like screen that kind of lowered out of the ceiling, and I'm like, the problem isn't that. The problem is like, I don't want a fireplace. Also, if I put the fireplace is on when you have the screen that the screen burns.
Yeah, won't it catch on fire?
So like, but while I went up to see that, this old woman in her 60s was yelling at this guy about like, why are there fireplaces everywhere? It's never cold enough to have fire. But I watch TV every day. I use the fireplace like 2 days a year.
She was saying the same thing you were.
Yeah, and it turned out she was a 65-year-old woman from Toronto. And I was like, thank you for not everyone's looking at me like, oh, the nerd doesn't want a fireplace. They wants to watch TV or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for being like completely different demographic from a completely different part of the country, but not even part of another part of the continent that was just like, yes, this is ridiculous. It's 90 degrees here all year. We do not need an open fire.
Yep. So after Matt went through all that, he started setting in on a gigantic project at his house. I don't think you've talked about this on the show or anything.
I've mentioned it a couple of times. Like, people have asked about it, but I stopped talking about it because it was taking so long.
Yep.
But I have a very large Transformers collection, and so the goal was to basically use one of the rooms in the house to be sort of a museum for them and to display everything I wanted to display and then kind of pare down everything that I didn't manage to display. So I had been going through building the shelves, building the cases, trying to figure out a lighting solution for the nice cases because that's where the masterpieces go. And also just like, it takes a long time to Marie Kondo like 1,500 toy robot. Like, that's a lot of sparking joy and not sparking joy per robot. But
so Adam, bring up the photos so Matt can start walking us through them.
So we're so this is the big shelf with like more current stuff. So you can, this is like mostly like more recent stuff, although one of the shelves is old G1 stuff that's too big to fit on the other G1 shelf. The empty shelf is, the shelf above the empty shelf is current, the War for Cybertron Siege figure, so the shelf below that is sort of growing space because there's going to be a lot more of those in the next
I like
2
that
years.
shelving unit, actually. Is that IKEA?
No, I got that years and years ago from some online place.
That would hold records really well.
I had that in the old apartment too.
Okay.
That's been there. I've had that for like 15 years. But I don't. I think I got it from some online ordering thing. I didn't get it from IKEA. I'm sure of that.
Is there any specific thing on the top? Any theme?
The top is combiners mostly and cities. So that's where all the things that are too tall to go anywhere else end up.
Okay.
So there's a couple more that'll go up there, and that's about it. Those are the big ones are called the Titan classes, and they don't fit anywhere else. So that's where they've ended up.
All right, next photo.
That is mostly older things. So that's the top is again things that are too big to fit elsewhere. And then you've got 3 shelves of original G1. That's all vintage original stuff. Those are all my original old figures. And then below that is Beast Wars, and below that is Transformers Prime, which is the more recent CG show.
I don't know how clear you guys can see these photos on the stream, but if you can see them on the computer monitor where I'm seeing them, they are so dense with each shelf is so dense with Transformers.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's crazy. All right, now here comes the real thing that you did.
This is the masterpieces.
And this is the stuff that he has worked on for a while. Let it come into focus there.
Resolve. So these are the masterpieces. These are the super high-end, like, all to scale. Like, they all look like the animation models, but they still transform into the proper alternate modes. And so there's a lot of empty space here because they haven't made figures of a lot of them yet, but they're about halfway there. We're getting there. There's a lot of combiner teams that are being made right now. You can see the empty spaces waiting for them.
And then the painting up above.
The painting up above is one-of-a-kind concept art of Cybertron from the War for Cybertron game by High Moon Studios. I got that at an auction at DICE many, many years ago with the plan to pretty much do something like this with it one day, and so I finally did. And then our friend Kevin, he does neon signs now, and he's going to make a neon sign of each the Autobot and Decepticon logos to go on either side of that.
Because they're split up by Autobot and Decepticon.
Yeah, the left side's all Autobots and the right side's all Decepticons. And to go along with that, the LEDs can change color.
And
so now you have the Autobot red and the Decepticon purple on each side, which will look real good with the neon signs. And there's an app for those things, so I can actually change them like in a full color wheel palette. So I'll be able to match the red and the purple to whatever the red and the purple of the neon turns out to be.
That's awesome. That is freaking awesome.
That is the third lighting solution I attempted. That took me about 2 months just to figure out a lighting solution that would work and still let me change colors, because there was a lot of tricky wiring and there was some soldering that didn't work properly. And finally I just took these like color change Wi-Fi LED strips and lined the whole thing like a movie poster cabinet, and there it is.
There you go. So,
I think it looks
how does
okay.
it feel to have something like that in mind for so long, and then kind of put all the parts together but never assemble them, and then to have it all finally done?
It feels pretty good, but it also kind of feels like sad.
Oh, really? Because it's like something
done.
you've been thinking about all this time?
Like, oh, it's done.
Yeah.
Now I just sort of wait for them to make things and put them in the shelves, and then I'm done. I have a horrible feeling that once it's all finished, I'm going to decide I want to get rid of them.
Like, you're just going to have this epiphany
Like,
where
I'll
you're
just,
like,
purge.
I don't want Transformers
But I
anymore.
have I have 2 giant boxes of stuff I'm getting rid of, because like just old things, or Unicron trilogy stuff that I don't want anymore, or things that you don't need 15 Optimus Primes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take some up to my nephew. I'm going to sell a bunch of stuff that's still boxed. I'm going to sell old third-party stuff that has been surpassed. Probably there's some people I like on Twitter that tweet about Transformers. I might offer to send some of those to them. But like, so now like it's going to be I'm going to be spending a lot of time on eBay selling this crap. It's not crap. I like it all, but like, there's just no room.
Yeah. Even in your house, there's not enough room.
But there are no longer any Transformers in the house outside
other
of that
than
room.
where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, they are all in that room now.
It is a weird dichotomy, though, that feeling of accomplishing something, but then realizing that it was something that was really important to you for a long time, and now it's kind of gone.
Yeah, and now it's like, well, because I'm waiting for like a lot of the future. They're making combiners and new toys coming out every few months or so. But it's like this weird thing where it's like, the collection curation process is no longer in any way in my hands.
Yep.
Like, I'm literally just waiting for companies to make things.
Stuff.
Like, I don't have that thing in the back of my head where I'm like, well, you could build those shelves now. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna play more Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But yeah, it was a a long process, but I think it looks pretty good.
Yep. So there you go, Matt's amazing Transformers collection.
There is a Soundwave. There was Justin Horman's asking. There are several blasters and several Soundwaves. And actually, I didn't take a picture. There's one tiny corner, like a corner shelf over in the back of the room that I haven't filled up yet because it's not secured to the wall yet. But that's where a bunch of kind of odds and ends are going to go. And on top of that is my original Soundwave and original Optimus Prime, the first two I ever got for Christmas in 1984. So they're 35 years old this year. So those are kind of the originals. They got a little place of honor up there. But I didn't take a picture of that because it's mostly empty.
Awesome. So there you go. Matt's amazing Transformers collection. A couple things before we get going. For a lot of you, Twitch Prime is probably turning over. We tend to bring this up once a month on GameFace. So for a lot of you, it's probably turning over. Mr. 60, thank you for subscribing via Twitch Prime. I see in the chat that it was 16 months in a row, so thank you. All the folks watching on Patreon, on Sifted, on YouTube, if you could kindly do that. We really, really need the help with Twitch Prime, and we're going to need it for the next several months. So if you could remember to do that, that would be absolutely awesome. So with that, it's time to kick off GameFace episode 184. We're going to start with, do you think this was the biggest game that actually has come out in the last 7 days?
I mean, yeah, probably.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Code Vein.
Unless you count today.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah.
Which is early access stuff.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about Code Vein.
Well, I was surprised, because look, I actually was neck deep in Transformers stuff in that room for like 7 days. And when I finally stripped, I'm like, oh God, what came out? Like, what should I be playing? And it was nothing. It was just, it was Code Vein, but like I passed on Code Vein.
I'm surprised, because it's right in your wheelhouse, right?
But I'm tired of Souls-alike.
Are you?
I'm tired of like kind of this, it's almost like that thing you like. And also, like, I don't like the God Eater games. So I didn't trust the pedigree at all. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see what you think of it.
So I did play Code Vein. Bandai Namco sent me a review code, and I felt it was my duty to at least give it a shot. I've played, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 hours of it. And another reason I did kind of take it up and play it is because there are.
It doesn't look like a very positive lower third.
Yeah. There are elements of this that make it different from Dark Souls that I thought might make me like it more. So. Probably the biggest of which is that there's really no stamina meter. There is a meter, but the way that you refill it, it's not on like a cooldown. You use attacks to refill what is essentially the stamina meter in this game. So you're rewarded for doing specific things in combat. And I'd never really found myself like, oh my gosh, I'm out of stamina in the game. And so that's why I gave it a chance and I decided to play it. But I'll tell you what, it was hard to play it for 5 or 6 hours. So let's see, where do I begin? I guess I should kind of give you guys the Crib Notes version of the story. I
bet there's vampires.
Yeah. So it's a post-apocalyptic game. The world has basically been torn asunder, and you are a part of a group called the Revenants. They're basically vampires. They are creatures that need blood to survive. However, you do not get the blood from human beings. You're not the typical hunt humans and suck their blood and stay alive vampires. There are plants that supply the blood, and the plants are beginning to run out. They're starting to become extinct, and so you're like, oh my gosh, our entire race of beings may be wiped out. And so it's kind of a race between you and another faction to basically take command of the last remaining blood plants in the world. As you can see, there's anime cutscenes. There aren't that many of them. This is the opening cutscene, and it's pretty good. The majority of the story, though, is told through in-engine cinematics, and they're not great. One thing I should probably say, and I know this won't bother some people, but it may bother other people. This game is, well, here you go. This game is crazy sexualized. Like, there's one scene where they literally show the pan from one of the characters' boobs up to her face 3 times in a row. Think about that. You know the shot. They do it in every anime. Yeah. They did it 3 times in a row. The second leading character has a shirt that's like ripped and like about to come off. Her boobs are about to burst out of her shirt. So if stuff like that bothers you, this is one of the more egregious examples. It's not Senran Kagura bad, but it's brushing right up against that kind of level of sexualization. I know some people don't care about that. Some people do, so I figured I'd bring it up. Like Dark Souls, when you die, you have to go back and find your corpse and reclaim all your stuff, or you lose it. That is one sort of tenet of Dark Souls that has been brought over. But honestly, I think that the combat to me probably is what's most different, for better and for worse. I think what'll probably bother Dark Souls fans the most about this game is that the enemy AI is terrible. Terrible. Like, there aren't even really attack patterns to memorize. In fact, a lot of the times the enemies just kind of just shuffle around and wait for you to kind of initiate. It's really weird. I would say it's a lot easier too, because again, you're not really worrying about a stamina meter. There's a thing called drain moves. Anytime you pull off a drain move, it gives you Ichor, which is basically the mana that you need to pull off special moves. So via combat, as long as you're using your drain moves, you're always going to have enough juice to pull off your special moves. And I think that really encouraged me to kind of try out everything in the combat suite. Especially when I'm just starting to play a game, I'll find like a combo or something that I feel like works and I can pull off all the time.
I just sort of decided to go another direction there, didn't
you? Yeah, I mean, this is what the enemies do. They just kind of stumble around and wait for you to kind of initiate them. They won't really just come in and attack. And then once they do, it's like their attacks are more blatantly telegraphed than in Dark Souls. It's really easy to kind of see that tell to know when to parry. Because parries, drain moves, and backstabs will all rebuild that meter for you so that you can pull off your special attacks. So again, the game kind of encourages you to use the entire arsenal. One thing you may have noticed looking at this footage is that you have a companion.
Yeah, I'd heard that the companion makes it way too easy.
It makes it a lot easier, because if you fall down, she revives you. So it's not impossible to die in this game, because the enemies do pack a wallop. If they hit you like twice, you basically die. But you do always have that fallback there of your AI character there to help you. The other thing I would say, too, about the AI characters is that they're pretty good. They actually do damage, which, and look, we're not even just talking about action RPGs. Almost every genre where you have an AI partner, they act like they're doing stuff, but the results don't usually equal what looks like the effort that's being put in. In this game, they can't take big chunks out of bosses or anything like that, but they'll kill rank and file enemies all on their own. Like, you can just stand back and they'll just like take care of it for you, which again does make the game easier than a Dark Souls game, but also makes it, to me, more palatable to people who haven't been big fans of Dark Souls. Another reason why I decided to give this game a try. Let's see. You can have 8 abilities equipped at once. They're called gifts. And one thing I like about this game, honestly, more than Dark Souls, more than Bloodborne, more than a lot of action RPGs, is you're not pigeonholed into one class. So you do pick a class when you begin the game, and when you first start with a class, you do just have to stick to the abilities that class has. Once you get to a certain point with each class, though, you can start taking bits and pieces from each class and mixing them together to create your character.
Well, I will point out that you are not pigeonholed into anything in the Dark Souls or Bloodborne games. Like, picking your class at the beginning of those games, all it does is determine your starting stats.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
It's purely like, if you think you'd rather use this or this or this, they'll give you a head start in the stats that are relevant to that. You can start as a mage. I started routinely in Dark Souls 2 when I play that. I start as a pure mage, and by the end of it, I'm a sword and shield guy. Like, you can adjust on the fly however you want.
Oh, I've never played a Dark Souls game long enough to realize that. That's hilarious. I've never made it that far.
Yeah, well, the starting class you pick means literally nothing in Dark Souls.
But I still like that feature inside Code Vein. It's nice, because a lot of other action RPGs do not allow you to do that. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air for me to just kind of spec out my guy the way that I wanted to. The level design in this game, it tries to be Dark Souls. It does the whole, you're in a maze, and then you come to a door, and you're like, oh my gosh, this links back to the other part of the level design. But the levels themselves are so drab and so boring and so repetitive. Like, they're themed like you're in a cave. But then you're in that cave for like 2 hours. It's the same textures repeating over and over.
I don't know if anybody does that better than From... Really?
Yeah.
Like I mean, because all like Dark Souls stuff it's dark and castle-y and cavey, but it doesn't feel drab or
there are
boring.
landmarks in Dark Souls,
and there's architecture, and there's, you know, the environments tend to tell some kind of a story about what they used to be, and kind of it's as opposed to this is clearly just, you know, video game cave number 4085.
Oh yeah, and there are and the dungeons, quote unquote, in this game are very confusing because they all look the same and they're all labyrinthine. And so it can be very challenging to try to figure out, like, honestly, I felt good about finding those doors because I realized I was going the right way finally. Like, it's very easy to get lost in this game or get turned around and start going the wrong direction and then realize, oh, wait, I was going the other way. It's just very samey. There aren't, like, big, memorable landmarks like there are in Dark Souls. Like in Dark Souls, there's always, like, a foreboding castle that you're, like, working towards or whatever. In this game, you're just always kind of stuck in these cattle chutes with the repetitive textures. It's easy to see the things that Dark Souls does very well when you're playing this game. It's a stark contrast. And look, this is coming from the same publisher that publishes Dark Souls, but to me it's pretty obvious that the From Software team did not consult on this game. I think they did the best that they could to kind of ape its most obvious features, and that's about as far as it goes. If
it was that easy, everybody'd do it.
The other thing about the level design, too, is that there are tons of bottomless pits.
Yeah, I see that.
Where if you just make one mistake, you fall and you die. And you can't be revived when that stuff happens. And I died just falling off ledges dozens and dozens of times in this game. Because you get involved in combat and you're not paying attention and your foot just slips off the edge and off you go. That got really annoying to me. In fact, that was probably one of the biggest reasons I ultimately quit playing. The creature design, pretty good. It does, like, I already saw, and I've only played a handful of hours, but I've already seen creatures that I saw at the beginning of the game reappear, like, 5 hours later. Like, you thought you had worked through them, and you just kind of kept getting new enemies, and then all of a sudden, creatures from the beginning of the game were appearing again. So, again, I have not played the whole game, but what I've played so far, the enemies are already starting to repeat. And again, enemies a big part of that Souls formula, you know, the grotesque enemies that all have different attack patterns, and you have to...
And all kind of fit their environment. Like, that's one of the things that's good about Dark Souls is, like, you find things, places that it makes sense that you'd find them. And it's not just populated, I'll just use those guys here, kind of thing. There's thought behind it.
Performance-wise, the engine doesn't hold up. The frame rates dip pretty regularly. And again, the game rarely draws all that much at a time. This is on
Pro.
Yeah. And it rarely draws all that much, but for whatever reason, that frame rate buckles, like, all the time.
That's not good for a Souls-alike.
Yeah, it's not good but again, I think you have more leeway in this game. You have, I think I don't know for sure, I haven't timed it, but it feels like the window that you have to react with parries and things like that is wider. Because there were times where I reacted and I was like, oh, I screwed that up, and then still somehow I managed to parry and get behind. And then the backstab is really important in this game because you parry around, you get behind, they can't attack you, then you do the backstab, and that builds up your special meter. So what I found that I do a lot in this game is parry, roll around behind, backstab. Parry, roll around behind, backstab.
Yeah, you're getting the Dark Souls pattern then.
Yeah, pretty much. So I guess what I would say in closing on this game is, how long has it been since a Dark Souls came out? It's been, what, a year and a half?
I mean, if you don't count Sekiro, yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah. So if
Dark Souls 3, 2017.
If you're really itching for Dark Souls, I mean, I would say this is the closest facsimile to it. There are other games that are aping the idea and the level design, like the Surge 2 and things like that. But if you're talking about how the game plays, kind of the difficulty curve of the game, the aesthetics of a game, this, to me, is the closest thing to Dark Souls.
Yeah, I just wouldn't... I don't like anime horror fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as like an anime... Again, I got a whole shelf full of anime on DVD and Blu-ray at home. I grew up watching anime stuff. I like it. But I've never liked the supernatural horror subgenre. Like the Hellsing and
yeah.
And even Vampire Hunter D to some degree kind of left me meh. Like, I just don't find it to be compelling. I mostly think like because they use a lot of, like, you know, modified versions of like vampires or werewolf, and I always think they're just sort of lame looking. And I don't know. If I'm going to go like anime style, I'd probably prefer to go sci-fi with it. I guess Astral Chain a little bit.
Yeah.
Although like Astral Chain, I think falls victim to the same thing where I think the monsters just sort of look generically anime supernatural horror-y. Like I just don't find them interesting. They just look big and lumpy and spiky and bleh, and that's what they look like to me here. Except they do have some nice big axes, I guess.
Yeah. I would say to your point about this being developed by the God Eater team, the combat does feel like God Eater at times.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Because a lot of the swords are like gigantic Buster swords that you would see in Monster Hunter or something like that. The
Cloud has a lot to answer for.
Yeah, the feedback, like the force feedback that you get from combat feels okay. It definitely doesn't feel as good as the Souls games.
It doesn't look like you have as much like variety as the Souls games in terms of like what you want to use or how things work.
Well, like I said, you have 8 abilities equipped at a time. And I
mean, in terms of
I'm not using them all, though.
I mean, in terms of which weapon. Weapon chain, because like if you want to use a big heavy thing, monstrous sword or axe or hammer, you can in Dark Souls. But you can also use like a smaller, faster weapon,
like a needle blade.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of, and most of it's viable. So I always liked that about Dark Souls was that team always made sure that however you wanted to play, it was more or less playable.
Yep. And with Dark Souls, obviously the plot is kind of one of these obtuse things where the more you
kind of a big scavenger hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
The more you adventure, the more you understand about it. This is the opposite of that. This is big, dumb anime game, beat you over the head with the plot, and it's offensively dumb. So don't play the game for story or anything like that. You're going to be really disappointed. But if you're looking for the closest thing to a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne in 2019, I hate to say it, this is probably it.
You might want to just play Bloodborne again.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a lot of people who play Bloodborne have already played it like multiple times.
Oh yeah, but like, I mean, people do. And fans of those games play them over and over. I mean, I played Dark Souls 2 4 times.
Yeah. But if you're looking for something new, this is probably your best bet. Or if you haven't bought Sekiro, probably Sekiro's definitely the vastly superior game. I'll say that right now. But it's a different setting, it's a different tone than this.
I mean, Sekiro, you can feel the Souls pedigree, but it's not a Souls game.
Yeah. And this honestly is like, I feel like Bandai Namco said to itself, okay, how close can we make our own Dark Souls game without From Software not wanting to work with us anymore?
I'm sure they don't mind. I mean, as long as they're not as long as they're not making them just churn out Souls games.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a pretty blatant ripoff, and the parts that they've done to change it don't necessarily make it all
I would guess
better.
Miyazaki's used to that by now. I mean, you make a paradigm-shifting game, people are going to rip it off,
Yeah.
But it's just... And he also... That team has to know that they're pretty safe in terms of that just because it's so hard to do. It's like how Miyamoto didn't care that everybody was ripping off Mario back in the day because no one else did it as well.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as just like making it look like the same thing. You got to make it feel like the same thing, and that takes a certain talent that only certain teams have.
Yeah, there's comfort in confidence.
Yeah.
And if you're confident that you're making the best example of whatever you're working on, then maybe you don't care so much if other people try.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of cases, those other projects are just going to make your project
they just
look
highlight why you're so good at it.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
I have to feel like Miyazaki and the Souls team are kind of in that space.
And I would say that that's pretty much what does happen with this game. It's a clear example of why Dark Souls was that paradigm shift and why it is kind of the gold standard in that subgenre.
Yeah, I mean, one day someone will make something.
Look at that, coming
that
in
good.
2018.
Wow.
Here we are, almost at the end of 2019.
Like, I think the Surge guys, I think like their next game might be
there.
Might be something to put on that same. Maybe
I've been
on that same
contemplating
shelf.
playing the Surge too. I didn't get very far in the first one though.
No, I mean I didn't pick up the Surge 2. I don't know when I would pick up the Surge 2. It's just, I don't know.
Because here come now. This was kind of our last little respite before Q4 really kicks in. So there you go. Code Vein is available for PC, PS4, Xbox One. Wouldn't be shocked if it ends up on Switch, to be honest with you. I mean, despite the fact that it runs kind of crappy, it's not really that demanding of a game graphically. Like, I feel like a good team could get it to work on Switch. But I have a feeling, well, that's the thing with Switch. They don't only put games on Switch that sold poorly to sell more. It's like, it's a double-edged sword. If it sells poorly, sometimes they put it on Switch because they're like, oh, we need to recoup our losses, and that's a quick and dirty port. Sometimes they're only going to put stuff on Switch because it sold really well on the other platforms. This one, I think, might be the earlier case of it sold like crap, and we need to try to get as much money back out of it as we can.
If they can do the port easily enough and cheap enough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you gave it to the team that actually made this version, I question whether they'd be able to do it. But there are some studios out there that are just becoming like Switch port houses, where they made the first game, they proved that they could do it, and now all these other publishers are coming to them being like, hey, can we get in line? Can you do ours next for Switch? We need more studios like that, I think. There's only like 3 or 4 right now.
They're definitely going to need more. I mean, that's... Oh, maybe not. I mean, once you hit next gen, you're pretty much giving up on moving those to the Switch. So it might not, that what looks like a boom market right now might be reduced to like getting, older current gen stuff moved to the Switch over the course of next gen.
That's what I think is going to happen. Because you need to give it software. I mean, it's doing very well, and you want to make money. So I think that's
it depends. Like if they are indeed doing the full backwards compatibility, like a period where like PS4 and PS5 are compatible versions, it just looks better on PS5. Theoretically, that's a scalability issue that you could extend to the Switch.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be impossible. Yeah, it would just look way, way worse, which is sort of like the. I was gonna say you get what you pay for, but the Switch ain't cheap.
It's not. Yeah, that's true. So anyway, there you go. Code Vein out now on all major platforms, minus Switch. All right, let's move along. We're going to talk next about Oculus Connect. I believe it's Oculus Connect 6.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Been a few of them.
Yeah, so Oculus Connect, arguably, is the biggest VR event of the year. I think it's safe to say at this point. It's kind of where Oculus...
Kind of damning with faint praise.
It is, yeah. It's kind of where Oculus rolls out all its new technology, its new initiatives, its new games for its various Rift platforms, which are becoming more confusing and more bountiful by the day. It seems like every 6 months we get some new permutation or combination of something Rift-related. But I think Oculus Quest, which is the wireless version of Rift, I think that's the big paradigm shift for VR in the last several years.
I mean, it's certainly the goal, I think. And I mean, Vive has one coming too. I don't remember what it's called, but it's not the Steam one. It's not the Steam Index. It's the actual HTC Vive is doing a wireless one. It's got pretty similar resolution to the Index.
I'm surprised HTC hasn't thrown in the towel on VR.
They're still trying.
They are.
I mean, I looked at it pretty close. Because like the wireless is kind of the thing that would get me back into like the high end headsets.
Yep.
But the reviews on it were not tremendous.
I mean, even with Quest,
because you're still paying $700.
I know.
That.
Even with Quest, though, you're still making sacrifices for that wireless model. But one of the things that Oculus is doing is what we're seeing right now. They're trying to get Quest on par feature-wise with its other headsets, and now there is hand tracking in Oculus Quest, or it's coming. It hasn't launched yet. But that's some pretty cool tech. Unless you're the person wearing the Quest and other people are watching you use it. Because all of a sudden you're just standing there.
You look like a crazy person.
You do. You absolutely do. But this is, it's good to see that they've brought this tech over. I believe there's like forward-facing cameras on it that makes it possible. That were kind of there all along. And I think they were put in there knowing that ultimately this functionality would show up. But would you recommend anyone buying anything but an Oculus Quest at this point?
I mean, if you really want the high-end thing, I mean, the Steam Index is probably the top of the line, but the price is crazy, and you're still wired to a computer, and you need the base stations. I mean, I wouldn't get this either. I feel like it's too primitive right now, but I feel like the next one or the next one after that one will be on par with something with like a really high-end experience. I mean, this is really cool, but I feel like it's still kind of prototyping the tech in some ways. Like, never buy the first iteration of anything. You know? As a longtime Apple user, I know damn well not to buy the first one. So the Quest is cool, the hand tracking is cool, like I like all that stuff, but I would not spend money on it until we've got a couple versions down the line, the resolution's higher, the hand tracking is more refined, the battery life's maybe a little better. and the screen door effect dealt with a little more.
Yeah, and everything, frame rates, all of it, it'll be improved, and especially for someone like me, I'm definitely not jumping in on the first one.
Yeah, you're still looking at kind of beta testing.
Yeah,
if you're buying these early Quests.
Now I'll say this: I have wondered often over the last 4 years if companies were going to bail. I mentioned THC. I thought absolutely was going to bail on VR. It hasn't. And I knew Oculus was less likely to do it because it has Facebook's money and it has deep pockets and it can keep shelling it out. But I think after this Oculus Connect, I don't think there's any doubt now that Facebook is 1,000% behind VR.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of the large reasons they were bought.
Yep.
Or they bought Oculus, rather.
Yep. So Facebook Horizon, they announced it at Oculus Quest.
This is what they're really after.
It is. This is a virtual world that you live in using your Oculus headset.
Because if there's anything everyone wants to do, it's live in your Facebook comments.
Yeah, what did you think of this? Did you check out the trailer? This trailer?
Yeah,
for it?
I mean, I know this is like what they're after and what they've always been after, like this sort of virtual Facebook space. But it just seems sort of absurd to me. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought Home was stupid on PlayStation as well, but there's people that love that. So maybe, but it's just I don't feel like I don't see Facebook as a place that I want to spend a lot more time in.
Yeah,
frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of a necessary evil for me in my life right now. It's not something that I look forward to.
Like, I don't want to race planes with those people. I just want to keep up with invites to parties and yell at them about like movies.
Right. Yeah.
Which I guess you could do virtually, but I mean, unless you put in a fighting mini game, there's not really going to be much enhancement to it.
Yeah, because the strange part is that the people that I know that spend the most time on Facebook and would be interested in something like this are really old. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're old, but I'm talking about like retirement age old. Like those are the people that really spend a ton of time on Facebook because they can and they want to.
Yeah, boomers.
Yeah, like my mom. My mom lives on Facebook. She takes photos all day, posts them, her friends on Facebook, like all of them. Like, it's this thing that older people do. And those are the people, I think, who would love something like this.
Also, everybody
but they have no interest
legs.
in VR.
The lack of legs is really bizarre.
It is. I don't understand why they're doing it.
Because they don't want to animate that. You get into inverse kinematics and trying to make the feet land on the floor all the time. And it
makes it more difficult. Yeah.
But, like, usually when you want to like avoid something like that, you make a decision to abstract the avatars a little more, as opposed to like very
humans
solid
with no legs.
Cartoon humans with no lower body is a very strange way to go with that.
Yeah. So that is kind of the big open world environment, like you said, PlayStation Home. It's basically Oculus's take on that, which did horribly. Although people seemed awful upset when it went away, which is kind of weird.
I mean, there were some people that really dug it.
Yeah.
In part because it was so unused that it became sort of like a niche
chat
community for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They were mostly left alone because no one remembered it existed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, stuff like that happens. I mean, I was part of eWorld back in the 90s. Who remembers that? Apple's on AOL competitor.
Yep.
Which then they shut that down after like a year and a half and moved everybody over to AOL, and it sucked. I remember one of the things everybody complained about was when you got mail in eWorld, a little red mail truck showed up on the thing, and a voice said, "You have mail." And then when we switched to AOL, it was the dude saying, "You've got mail," and everyone was like, "That's grammatically incorrect." And there was a whole thing where people like figured out how to replace the WAV file, so it was the eWorld version. Like it was bizarre.
That is bizarre.
And then, like, you look it up in the past, I think eWorld had, like, 1,000 users. It was, like, nobody used that thing.
Yeah.
I was only on it because it came free with the computer I bought.
I mean, I suspect the same thing's going to happen with this.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
Because, like I said, the market is...
means also what happened with Home.
Yeah.
It's like, it was on the PS3. It was free. Why not? And some people got sucked in, and most people didn't.
Yep. So a more confined kind of take on that is called Facebook Shared Spaces. My prediction, Matt, has come true. Do you remember? Back when we first started talking about Facebook and Oculus, I was like, oh, I know what they're going to do. They're going to create virtual living spaces where you're going to end up paying for furniture that goes into your virtual space and blah, blah, blah. Here it is. It's basically a virtual living room that you can sit in with other people and hang out. You can watch like football games on the virtual TV. And you can hang out with them. They have not talked yet about the monetary stuff that I kind of predicted would happen. Right now, they're just displaying the tech and showing you what's possible. But I guarantee it, as this evolves, they're going to start selling virtual furniture for your virtual space, so your virtual friends can come over and hang out with you. It's a no-brainer. If you wonder how, Facebook is like, Facebook is like, how are we going to make money? This is how Facebook's going to make money.
I think this was always the plan.
Yeah. They never publicly stated that was the plan.
No, but it was obvious this is what they're after. They're after the ability to. That's what you're trying to sell, because Facebook's ostensibly about keeping in touch with people all over the world that otherwise you might lose touch with, as well as pushing amazing amounts of propaganda at you for money. But the point of this was for buying a VR company always seemed to be like to do that with the VR space. Yep. Because that lets you do crazy. The monetary incorporation is endless for that. Like, not just like buying furniture or whatever, but like, okay, let's say you can get a family that lives 4 different places in the country to come together in a virtual living room, and we all want to watch the new release, the new Marvel movie that just came out on digital, and then we rent that through Facebook's rental service, and boom.
Yeah, they've just made $4 or whatever.
Yeah, and everybody gets to sit around. It's like you're sitting around on your own couch with your family, but you're watching the movie together. But
you're not.
You're no, but you're getting Facebook's getting usage time. Facebook made money from you buying the headset. Facebook probably made money from you buying personal things to be on the avatar to make it look like you, or to make it make the room look like your old living room.
Yeah.
And you're making money off of renting whatever the content you're sort of enjoying in tandem. It makes so much damn sense.
It does, yeah.
All you need to do is make it work
and work well.
Yeah.
Then the final thing that was shown off is a storefront for Oculus.
Right.
Which is crazy that it hasn't been done until now.
Well, they had a store.
It's called Oculus Link. But it was separate from...
It was like a website.
Right.
It was not part of the headset.
It was not part of the headset. And now, organically, it's a part of the headset environment. So if you want to buy something, or you're playing a demo, and while you're playing it, you want to buy it, you don't have to turn off your headset, go to your PC, buy it, and then download it. You can do that directly from the headset now, which, great idea, but something that probably should have been there a long time ago.
Well, it makes more sense now that they're a self-contained wireless thing.
Yeah.
It was, on the Vive, it's easy to just take it off and do whatever you need to do on Steam.
But Quest, it's a whole different
story. On the
story.
Quest, everything has to be self-contained. So.
Yeah. And I guess if there's one disappointment from the whole show, it's a lack of games. Usually this is the place where Oculus shows off all its big stuff coming.
Vincent says Oculus Link is not the storefront.
What?
It's the thing that lets you play PC VR games on your Quest.
Oh, interesting.
Like a remote play thing?
I don't think that's accurate, though. If you watch that trailer, it shows all the games behind it. It's going to link, basically, your headset to the PC. And that's why it's called Link, which makes total sense. Yeah. That's why they're showing all the games behind the headsets there, because you'll be able to purchase games directly from your headset.
And maybe play them off the PC, because those things don't have a lot of internal storage.
Well, a big problem for Quest is that it doesn't have a lot of content. And so that's what Vincent mentioned. You're going to be able to play games that were originally only for Oculus Rift on Oculus Quest, also through this new platform that they're launching. And so anyway, getting back to the games, they really didn't debut any games but one. And it was kind of a big one. A Respawn game no less, and they're making Medal of Honor Above and Beyond exclusively for Oculus headsets. This World War II shooting franchise has been MIA for quite a while, but obviously EA still owns it, and EA owns Respawn.
It was around recently, but it was modern stuff.
Right.
We haven't seen it do World War II in a long time.
What was the last Medal of Honor?
God, I can't remember.
Is there one for this gen? For Gen 8?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think there is. It's been 7-8 years since we got
I think it was Warfighter? Medal of Honor Warfighter?
No, that was Ghost Recon. Advanced Warfighter.
It was something like that. It was they did the reboot one in modern times, and then there was another one that did that had a weird subtitle. And one of them had that weird Uncanny Valley cutscene of that woman with the hair.
I don't
Like
remember.
that became a meme for a while. Like these characters that looked really realistic, except for the way their hair connected to their head, and it was bizarre. But that was years and years ago.
Yeah. Like, this franchise has been MIA for quite a while. Do you think it was the right
Yeah,
move?
Warfighter. That's what
It was Warfighter?
Yeah.
Yeah, for PS3. Yeah, Medal of Honor Warfighter. You were right. Interesting. Do you think this was the right move to bring this back for Oculus?
I don't know. Who cares? Like, it's like you might as well. I mean, it's kind of neat that Respawn's going back to the they started They didn't start Medal of Honor, but they did Allied Assault, which sort of revolutionized.
Which was
whole
the best
shooter.
Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that woman had his hair. Maybe that's where the hair came from. And it makes sense to, like, if you're going to go in on VR, get your A team to do it, and Respawn is certainly that for EA right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, EA has stayed out of VR.
Oh yeah,
Is this its first VR game? I think it is.
might be. I mean, EA stays out of anything.
Anything
they don't
trendy.
feel, well, also anything they don't feel is completely proven and hitting like
it
mass.
plays it really safe.
They want mass profits, and they want revenue that, like, they can put up on a, they want to put it up on the screen during the pitch, during the investors meeting, and be like, look what we did, So, I mean, if it makes sense to have them go back. Oh, look, it's the original cover.
I think it was smart because, in all honesty, this IP was kind of dead.
Yeah.
A whole lot of people didn't really care about it, but they've managed to kind of create a Trojan horse to get their games.
I also wonder how much of that is like, did they start this when Call of Duty announced they're going back to World War II?
Who knows?
Because they thought that might be the new trend.
Respawn's awful busy.
I guess they have 3 teams.
Yeah, holy crap, man. They just keep.
I mean, I don't think this game probably took a team like Fallen Order or
of course
Titanfall,
not.
but the pedigree's there. So if you're gonna have anybody trying to make first-person shooting work on VR properly, I guess these are the guys to do it.
Didn't look great though.
No, it did kind of look like Medal of Honor.
It did.
Like
I mean, they nailed that part of it, but it's not like seeing that. It's not like you see that and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to get an Oculus headset. Like,
no.
They're still kind of waiting for that game, it feels like. After all this time, I guess Beat Saber might be the one game that's kind of like a killer app for VR. But
That's as close as you get, I think.
Yeah.
But of course, the problem is it's not exclusive to anything.
Right, yeah, it's on everything, so it doesn't give you a competitive advantage. That might be something smart to snatch up if you're a VR company.
Yeah.
That IP. So Beat Saber 2 exclusive on your platform or whatever might actually make a difference.
Maybe. I mean, you'd have to find a way to make Beat Saber 2 unique from Beat Saber to make people say, like, oh, I can't just play this thing I love already. I need to spend $600.
More money. Yeah, you're right.
But I don't know. Whatever does that, we don't know what it is yet. I think it'll be some new thing that we've never imagined.
After all this new stuff, what's your prognosis on the trajectory of VR, Matt?
Steady, but not revolutionary. I mean, you're not looking at like anything that's really going to be like, oh wow, that's the VR I need now, because like 2 or 3 years maybe. Like you might have some kind of Quest style self-contained thing with enough storage space and power and battery life to be worth it. But
I feel like
for now I'm just sort of like waiting. Also, like you're about to run into you're about to hit a year where everybody's going to be waiting to buy new consoles. Like there's no time or money for new VR headsets.
I feel like we said this like 4 years ago. We were like, okay, in 4 or 5 years we'll get the second one, or we'll get a wireless one, and that's when it'll take off. And then we got the second one and got the wireless one, but they're still not quite good enough.
Yeah, well, also the problem is like some of them took a step back. Like the wireless ones are not as good as the wired ones are now. So like you're having to compromise a little bit just by the nature of the wireless, but it'll get there.
I mean, Quest is kind of on par with the first Rift. It's pretty close.
Yeah, but the first Rift wasn't something I bought either.
Right,
so.
yeah. And it has problems. People, there's a reason it didn't take off because
and there's still kind of a temptation
to
stick with sort of the Index or the Vive ecosystem for me, because I already have 2 of those tracking stations.
Yep.
And like as they use more and more to, the room scale on that is still really good.
Yeah, for sure.
So like if were they to come out like with a better, Vive or Index with wireless that could use the tracking stations, like I would consider that. I have the room in that office. If I move the chair out of the way,
you could
to do that in there, and I could just sort of stick the lighthouses up on the tall shelves, and I'd be done. But like. The hardware is just not where I want it to be, because I already spent a lot of money on those other ones, and I don't use them very much. So it has to be a thing where I know the performance is there, and it's good enough for me to be like, oh, I'm happy with that, but also something I can just pick up and put on my head and not have to worry about wires and all this crap, and just pick it up and go. Like, that's really you're at the pick up and go stage pretty much already, but you just got to wait for them to refine it and make it powerful enough to like kind of all come together properly.
I don't know if because they're starting to step back in technology so that they can make it wireless. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm really staring down the barrel of like not really being able to handle VR for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're going away from, hey, here's this next hyper-powered VR helmet. Instead, let's dial back the power and make it mobile.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's the way they have to do it.
I agree. It's the smartest thing to do for the business, but it's not going to do me any favors, which is disappointing to me because, again, VR is something that I dreamed about my entire life, and now it makes me want to barf. So, yeah, I mean, it was a good show, I feel like, for Oculus. I mean, they showed a lot of stuff, but...
Yeah, I think VR is just going to continue to sort of toil in the background of the industry for a while.
I just think ultimately it's going to just take a game, though, to make it bigger. More importantly, the technology is there-ish. It doesn't have a killer app still after all this time. And that's why I feel like they kind of missed the boat here. They're like, okay, we have all this new tech and stuff for social stuff on Facebook, but where are the games, bro? Like,
I would... you got to go to some of the innovators. You got to go to, honestly, if I were a VR company, I would be courting the living hell out of Nintendo right now, because I bet they could come up with something that would be like, that's something you'd look at and be like, what? And then like when people got their hands on, I'd be like, oh,
I get it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They're pretty good at that.
I don't see that happening though.
No, I mean, granted, they haven't like done tremendously well in that space with the Virtual Boy and the 3DS 3D gimmick didn't really move the world, but I don't know. Somewhere out there, someone has the idea that's going to become the game that gets everybody to pick a VR headset up.
Yep.
Hell, maybe it'll be that stupid Facebook thing. You don't know, but like
it might be. It
dumber
can't hurt.
Things have caught on.
I just, I always, when I think about Facebook, I think about my mom because she uses it incessantly all day, every day, and I just cannot see her ever getting to a place where she's like, I'm going to spend $500 on a VR helmet.
I mean, you'd think that, but you never know. I mean, my mom got hooked on 3DS and DS stuff and played all the all the Phoenix Wright games and all the.
My mom has never done that.
She played the DS all the time. Like she has like 4 of them because she kept upgrading. So she continually you're like, oh, a new one's out. I gotta go get that. Like she loves the bigger ones. When they come up with a bigger one, she'd get that one and play Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton and
no Switch though.
No, doesn't care about Switch.
Yeah. Although she might, now that all these brain training games and everything are coming out for Switch.
The Switch is too big. She's not into it. She likes the little things she can hold.
Gotcha. All right, so anyway, that's Oculus Quest 6. I think it's a harbinger of things to come in VR, but I just feel like they're still off target on what they're trying to promote and push.
Yeah, well, you're still stumbling around trying to figure out where the killer app is, and you just don't know. I mean, who would have thought Beat Saber would have been that big of all the things that people were making?
Yep. But
I do think it seems to indicate that like trying to make VR versions of games that already exist is probably not the right direction, which makes Medal of Honor probably a misfire.
Yep.
No matter how good it is. But,
I mean, it doesn't matter to Respawn because they're getting paid no matter what.
They're fine. This is clearly like a Bethesda Switch deal where they're getting money to make this thing, and they're going to come out of it ahead. Which is, again. It's also why, actually, EA did make a VR. I think they made the VR Star Wars thing for the first Battlefront.
Yeah, they made that like a little demo thing.
Yeah, but that was Lucasfilm paying them with Rogue One marketing money to make a Rogue One marketing VR game, basically a 30-minute like commercial. So EA will make VR stuff if you pay them and make it worth their while.
Yeah.
But they're not striking out on their own on this, and they're probably right.
Yep.
At least for what they're after in terms of being a company and wanting mass profits.
Yep, it's true.
You're not going to get that in that space right now.
All right, let's move along. We're going to talk next about Sony and PlayStation. A couple stories broke this week related to Sony. Neither one was big enough to kind of deserve its own topic on GameFace, so we rounded them up into one. The first thing we want to talk about is Shawn Layden leaving PlayStation. Mm-hmm. This was kind of hinted at. I feel like it was like a year ago. There were rumors swirling that he was going to leave, and then it didn't happen. Now it has happened. It's official. One, what do you think happened, Matt?
I have no idea. I think it's a little weird that this happens now, right before the PlayStation 5 ramp up.
Yeah, the timing is very odious.
With no real announcement of who's taking his place.
How about this shot right here? 2 of the 3 gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Reggie was clearly on his own terms.
Yeah. I mean, he just retired. He was done. I mean, we don't know. Maybe Shawn was too.
Maybe, but like...
It is, you're right, though. The timing just doesn't sit right.
Like, that's not usually when you want to lose your head of international, et cetera, et cetera.
No, not when you're a year out from launching your new platform.
I mean, it is Sony. I mean, Sony is rife with internal struggles and power plays and weird, like, grudges and ego things. I mean, you see that a lot with Sony Pictures. Sony Computer Entertainment usually seems to be more self-contained. But I mean, movie stuff leaks a lot because, like, it's entertainment, it's big budget, and people talk all the time, and you can't keep anything quiet. It's easier to keep stuff quiet on the corporate side of the computer entertainment side. But yeah, I mean, you hear rumblings about that now and again. But one of the most unique things about Shawn Layden is you barely knew anything about what he was doing, or when he didn't want you to know.
Yeah, he's a pretty private guy.
Yeah,
and that really wasn't the case with Kaz and the people who came before him either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people knew Kaz. People know Kaz. But I've never met anyone who was like, yeah, I hung out with Shawn Layden and, like, he's a cool guy. Like, that stuff happened all the time with former Sony heads.
Mm-hmm.
But not with him. Like, he was a very private guy. He kind of did his job and went home and lived his life.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that. But
yeah. But you don't see him out socializing at E3 at, like, the after parties or anything like that. Like, again, you would see other Sony executives doing that. They'd be at Pactor's party or whatever. Shawn Layden never showed up at Pactor's party. You never really saw him outside of him on stage for a Sony presentation or whatever. I don't think this has anything to do with why he left, but he was a different kind of platform head from what I think we're used to in the industry.
He wasn't really a personality in the way, like, the others tend to be.
Yeah, he was and I hate to talk about him past tense, like he's gone. He may have a job somewhere else where he's getting paid like 10 times the money, and he's gonna take over Stadia or something.
With that resume, it's not that hard to land.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, he may go work with Stadia. Maybe he wants that Google money. Sony's a Japanese company. Typically, Japanese companies don't pay as well as Western companies. Maybe that's part of it. I have no idea. But I suspect we will see him popping up. Do you think this affects PlayStation at all?
Probably not. I mean, Sony's a giant machine, and they wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't like if they didn't have a plan for it. I mean, I wonder who's going to take his place. I'm sure they know already.
Yeah, they haven't announced anyone though.
But
which makes you believe that this was, probably not an acrimonious split.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, that takes time to organize and set up, and if he had a hard date for leaving, if he wanted to leave, like, maybe you haven't found your replacement yet, but like you can't make him stay, so you gotta announce it. It's just interesting to lose that key person right before presumably the PlayStation 5 thing is about to ramp up. Although they have a couple months till the end of the year, they got 6 months till the end of the fiscal year. I mean, it's not like they're in a really bad kind of wrong-footed position right now. They got time. 2
big launches coming up with Death Stranding and then The Last of Us early next year.
They don't really need him for that though. I mean, it's. I
mean, what is he? If you think about it, what has he been doing? Because they haven't had press conferences or press events for a long time.
Well, he does corporate-y stuff. I mean,
he's doing his job, as it were.
Like, he's usually if you're in that job, even in entertainment, your job isn't to be a figurehead, so getting out on stage all the time. It's just sort of like a quirk of what the game industry has become.
Yeah.
So they have to find something. They're gonna have to find someone who can do that. That's the interesting thing, is finding someone who can do the business side of things.
And
who can also go up and present, because like,
I mean, that's
the thing.
Who these people are. Like, that's what these people can do. They have the knowledge and the technical know-how, but they can also stand on stage and captivate people.
Yeah, and they're not all going to be Reggie.
Well, it's crazy to think there's only one of those 3 left in the industry right now.
Yeah,
and this was less than a year ago that this was shot at the Game Awards, like 10 months ago.
Keeley curse.
Yeah, they're going to start calling
You ruined
it that.
everything, Jeff.
Or I wonder if Jeff knew all this stuff was coming and was like, let's get these three guys together.
No.
I don't know.
He might have known that Reggie was thinking about it, but it was too 9 months ahead of time.
Well, I mean, don't forget, like a month and a half or 2 months ago, these rumors were already swirling about Shawn Layden. It didn't happen, but then it did. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Who knows? But I'm glad that he did this. Because to get those guys on stage one time before two of them ended up disappearing.
It's very useful B-roll.
It is. It's the only way you're going to have B-roll with Shawn Layden, unless you want to go through a whole press conference and clip out like 3 seconds at a time where he just says, and now this game.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the things in his era was nice. Was his whole thing was like, no, I'm just going to, here we go, another game.
Yeah, he wasn't chatty. He's just like, we're just going to show you the games today. Is that cool? And everyone cheers, and then he just shows you the game. So
it wasn't like, who was before him?
Oh.
Tretton?
Jack Trent.
Yeah.
He was always at PAX parties. That's what I'm saying. Like, prior people in that position did show up to E3 stuff like that, but not Shawn. Like, he just didn't. So, interesting.
Who wants to hang out with us?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think Jack Trenton or him had really any impact over how PlayStation did.
No.
So I don't see him leaving having a major impact on PlayStation 5 or anything like that. If there's one thing that's been proven over time is that whoever is the figurehead at Sony has very little to do with how Sony ultimately performs, except for Ken Kutaragi.
Yeah.
Because he would go on stage, and he was like the technical director at PlayStation.
Yeah, well, now they've locked him in a room somewhere. So.
Well, I don't think he works there anymore.
Oh, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he's gone. Yeah, after PlayStation 3, they were like, we can't have another
PlayStation 3
console
and the
like
PSP.
that.
It was just like,
what are you doing, man?
PSP.
I mean, I have a feeling the Vita might have been one of his last legacy projects.
Probably,
even.
I think so. I mean, the PSP
It's very Ken Kutaragi, though.
We have made the most beautiful thing in the world. Please do not criticize it.
Yeah, please go get a second job
away.
to pay for it. Yeah, and he did go away. Not on his own accord, from what it sounds like. But Chester Rugine, I think is how I pronounce it, says, Jack Trent left in 2015, too. There have been 3 changes in 4 years. Interesting.
Chester Eugene.
Congram says, I thought Shawn was a good presenter, though, and I agree with that. He was good.
Yeah.
He was very even-keeled. He never kind of got bent out of shape in one way or another.
They've still got Cerny if they can
peel
him away from
Knack
3.
He's kind of the new Ken Kutaragi now.
Right, he's
now.
the tech
He's the
guru.
tech genius guy who creates all the products and just comes out whenever he has something to show, and then he goes back into his workshop and keeps working on it. But he dreams within reason, unlike Ken Kutaragi.
Well, Ken's visions were, they were weird anyway.
Yeah.
Like, even if God, that cell processor was such a weird idea.
And he was gone. After that, he was gone.
Yeah, we never did get to jack into cyber world.
Nope, we never did, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately.
Yeah, that's what Facebook's trying to do now, I guess.
Yep.
Who knew that cyber world had no legs in it?
Yeah, seriously. And then the other big story from Sony this week is that Sony is launching its own retail store online. So it already obviously has a digital storefront where you can go and buy. Now it is opening an online store where you can buy consoles, you can buy physical versions of games, you can buy controllers and all the other accessories. You can buy PlayStation VR. Why do you think Sony is doing that, Matt?
Because they're preparing for the shuttering of GameStop.
Yeah,
and they're gonna still want that retail channel available
and to control it itself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it,
you cut out the distribution middleman.
I wonder if they'll be able to offer things. They won't, but I wonder if they would be able to offer things cheaper on its store.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but they why would you?
Right. Well, they won't.
It's just more money for them.
So, do you think that's really the purpose? They just see kind of brick and mortar going away, and they want to make sure that they still have a presence in that space.
Part, but also because Microsoft has it. So, and also Microsoft has their brick and mortar stores. Sony does have them too. I mean, there's a couple of Sony ones, but
there's one up in
they're not just
San Francisco.
There's one down here too.
Is there?
There used to be one in the Culver City Mall. I don't know if it's still there.
It's not. I go there to eat like every Friday night at a couple restaurants there, and I've never seen it.
It was either there or it's one of those like weird outdoor boutique malls had one of them.
Huh.
And you just went in like one side. I think it was over there, but maybe Din Tai Fung's there now. But you went in. It was kind of disguised as a Sony audio store, but there was a lot of speakers and setups, but there was a big PlayStation section.
Yeah.
But it's not really their focus.
Yeah,
but,
Microsoft stores are kind of like Apple stores.
yeah, Microsoft stores are directly
They're really
compared to
bougie
Apple stores,
and-
and then Nintendo stores are obviously rarer, but
Much rarer. Yeah. Although there's one coming to the West Coast.
Yeah, there's supposed to be one opening in LA at some point.
Yeah.
But I've been hearing that for like 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think just a couple months ago they officially announced it, though, that it's...
Yeah, well, I mean, I heard about it when I was at the one in New York in February, and we mentioned where we were from, and one of them's like, "Oh, we're opening a store over there, like in LA," and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, "I don't know if you should be telling people that."
This is different, though, what Sony's doing, because it's not opening brick and mortar stores. It's just you're still ordering stuff online and it's being shipped to you, but it's actual physical products.
I just think it does make sense to sort of like take that infrastructure and bring it in house if you're worried about sort of, obviously there's going to be Best Buy and Walmart and all that stuff, but like if
And
you're
Amazon,
yeah.
I'm just wondering why it would invest the money to do this.
because you're cutting the middleman out, and it is more lucrative to some degree because you don't have to, the retailer doesn't take a cut.
But now you're paying for shipping. Shipping's a part. You have to create the infrastructure. You have to have the warehouses. You have to work out deals with USPS or FedEx or UPS.
Maybe they're just tired of doing all the negotiation for all these special edition things and exclusive things, and then now when the Death Stranding exclusive controller and PlayStation 4 come out, you just order it from Sony's site. And
I mean, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could also see consumer confidence getting to a place where they're like, okay, I want to buy something PlayStation. I mean, why would I buy it anywhere else but directly from Sony? Mm-hmm. Because you feel like your warranty or whatever there's no middleman in there that could muck things up where like the manufacturer's warranty is superseded by the retailer's warranty. There's just a higher level of trust.
And you don't know what their plan is for PS5.
Right.
Like,
you're right. That's a good point, Matt.
Like
maybe this is some key component of PlayStation 5 that we don't know about yet.
Like if they're going to sell these things through their own site and kind of
imagine if Sony did that.
Well, I mean, they'll still sell it through normal retail channels, but like
but what if they were like, we have
have
way more stock at our store.
Stock here. We have there's a special Founders Edition that only comes through this store.
Special controller, launch edition
thing.
Controller,
like the day one edition equivalent of
Microsoft
Xbox One.
Xbox, yeah.
But you can only get it through Sony's online store. Like something like that would make sense. To
me. You just think about all the overhead it takes to set up e-commerce like that. It's not cheap. I mean, they already have warehouses where they're storing the stuff, but.
And you can do stuff like they'll be able to do stuff like with what Nintendo does now, where like they can sell special edition controllers on PSN, and you just go and buy it on PSN, and they'll ship it to you. Like for a real thing. That's a fun trick that the Nintendo eShop does.
I mean, also Microsoft with its controller,
with their
program,
controllers,
you can buy like the crazy customized.
I mean, to
ones.
some degree, this is just them catching up.
I guess you're right in some ways. Yeah, some of the stuff that the other guys have been doing. Can you buy hardware directly from the eShop?
Like a system?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do that.
I don't think you can.
You can buy controllers, and you can buy.
You definitely buy controllers.
You can buy Xboxes from Xbox Store.
Yeah.
On the Xbox if you wanted second Xbox One or whatever. I don't think you can buy another Switch on eShop.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I haven't seen any place where you could buy the actual consoles there.
Yeah, you can buy it. I mean, you can buy a new
like
Switch
refurbed,
you can buy a new Switch from like Nintendo's website. Like they have an actual same store where they sell hardware and everything like that. But the
eShop,
as far as I know, only on the eShop itself, it's just like the special edition controllers, which instantly sell out in 3 hours, and you never see them again.
Yeah.
But
so it looks everything's starting to transition to Gen 9. I mean, and you were smart to kind of pick up on, you know what, maybe this doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but maybe in, a year's time it makes a ton of sense. Mm-hmm. And it also makes perfect sense that they would want to get that stuff set up now to make sure they've ironed out all the kinks, and if they're going to launch a big product next year, they're ready to go.
Yeah, you got Christmas. When is it going up? Is it soon?
Soon,
now?
yeah.
So you have this Christmas to sort of figure out how it handles the stress. And
True, yeah.
Kind of use it as a dry run for what the launch would be next year. Put some pre-orders up. Put the pre-orders up at E3 around that time next year.
I mean, if you have that retail store, you can control everything. You
right.
can put up pre-orders before the retailers get them,
And again, I emphasize this all the time. The point is to get you in the ecosystem.
Yep.
Like that's what they want. Is they want you tied to that ecosystem. Maybe they'll have some kind of point system the way Nintendo does.
Just like Game Pass. It's a Trojan horse to get you in there and spend more money.
You just want them on that site. You want them in that ecosystem. You want them signing into that account. You want them saying like, oh, maybe I should buy it on this account because then I get the points for this, or then I get.
You want them
a
renting
special list
movies
thing or
and things
whatever.
like that on that account.
Hell, even if it's just like, oh, you buy a game here, we give you $5 credit on the PlayStation Store.
Yeah.
Like like a gift card kind of thing. Like there's ways to do it
For sure.
that tie you to that Sony infrastructure for forever, basically. Which I'm sure with a system that is not only as God knows what this thing's going to do, but you have to assume that over the course of this next generation, all three of them are going to be trying to sort of transition you to digital, because I'm sure several of at least Sony and Microsoft would probably love for Gen 10 to have no disk drive.
Oh yeah, for sure. It makes their lives so much easier
to have no optical drive, and if you've got them sort of tied into that online store infrastructure, makes it that much simpler to just make that transition.
It also makes it a lot less painless. You're going to have a lot less people complaining because they've already been conditioned to use this other sort of way of getting games and playing games. And we've been going through that a little bit this generation.
I certainly have.
Yeah, a lot of people have. I still haven't. Like, I still buy all my games physical at this point if I can help.
I just, because like physical games are useless at this point, because
some of them.
What's it for? Like, okay, if I put that disc in 5 years from now, it's useless because it's 15 patches behind the actual playable version of the game, which obviously you can be able to update it and whatever. But if that, but most of the people that still buy physical seem to be in sort of this archive mode, and it's like, well, that's not a thing anymore because they patch and update so much, drastically update the point that the version that's on the disc is really not the game you're trying to play anymore.
It's not, but it still has value because it's still a key. It's a key to the game. So even 5 years from now, if you still have that disc and you put it in the PlayStation 9 or whatever the hell it is at that point, it's still going to say this is the disc somebody bought, and it's going to go onto those servers and search for the updates and download them, and you're still getting the game with that disc.
Or I just still have the digital one in my library. And if that goes away, we're probably not going to have a PS9. So
yeah, I mean, the only reason to buy physical is for resale value. That's it.
Yeah.
In 2019, that's the only reason to buy physical.
And that's a valid reason.
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely. Because there is no resale value yet, although that's changing. Like, there are countries now that are like, no. Like, people should be able to resell their digital games. And
I mean, that's the law in Europe. So
right.
They're going to have to figure that out. And they have figured it out to some degree.
Yeah.
Like, you can get refunds over
Isn't
there.
it goofy, though, how services...
Can't get refunds on the PlayStation Store here.
Isn't it goofy, though, how services like Steam, they get in trouble in another country because you can't sell your digital games or whatever, and then they force them to do it. And instead of just rolling that out everywhere, they just roll it out in that country. It's like, why wouldn't you just get out of head? It's all going that way. You can see it. It's going to happen eventually. It's going to be that way everywhere. Like, why not just be proactive and let people sell their digital games now? Like,
you don't concede giving away money until you're forced to.
Are you giving away money, though? You've already got paid for that.
You got to give their money back.
Oh, you're talking about returning games. I'm talking about being able to resell a digital game.
Can you do that on Steam in Europe?
In certain countries, you can, yeah. There was just a big story about it this past week. I think France, maybe, was the country that first got it passed. But, I mean, think about it. You should be able to resell your digital stuff. You paid the same money for it you did for anything else. You have ownership over it, or you should, just like anything else that you buy. You don't. That's the catch.
Well, I don't agree with that. But, like, because the reason you can resell physical games is because of a physical object. When you buy a digital game, you're really just buying a license key. And that's not something that's really ever been expected to have monetary value.
That's garbage, though. Like, when you buy that digital game, you should be getting right to the code. You shouldn't just have a right to a key. Like, that's garbage. Like,
but that's not how anything works. Like, that's not how
that doesn't mean it's right, though.
That's not how the disc works either. It's literally the disc is literally a license to access the game, and you don't own that code. You don't own that game. So, like,
but you own the disc with the code on it.
But you can't legally do anything with that code. You're literally
you can play it.
But you couldn't rip the code and sell it yourself. That's not your code.
You don't have to. You sell the disc.
The disc is the access. That's the thing. That's the legally. That's what the disc is. That's why you have that EULA.
Oh, I know what they
everywhere.
are, but that doesn't mean it's right. Like, that's what I'm saying.
That's
what
it is,
needs
though.
to change.
There's no ethical question there. It's just it's not going to change. It's never going to change.
Why?
Because there's no reason for it to change. Like,
what do you mean there's no reason for it? If that's the stumbling block that you need to get over to be able to resell digital games, there absolutely is a reason for it.
But it's not a stumbling block you need to get over here. It's a stumbling block you need to get over places where that law already exists, pre-existing. But you're never going to get that law passed, like in the United States.
Why?
Because it's not in the corporate interests of anyone who holds the power strings. Like, you're never going to convince the Senate they need to do that because it's in the interest of the consumers. It's not in the interest of the people that actually lobby for things. I'm in the corporation.
You're assuming that Congress will never do anything for the people.
Pretty much.
I don't believe that.
Not in.
I believe it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Not and go against, like.
I mean, look at what just happened with the NCAA in California. I mean, nobody thought that was ever going to happen, and now California is going to force the hand of every other place because they were the first one to pass the law.
Yeah, but NCAA players are real things, and
so is a disc. A disc is a real thing.
Discs are real things, and you can resell discs, but you cannot resell digital code because that digital code doesn't have any tangibility as a retail product. Like that's the reason people.
But but it's the same thing on the disc. It's the same ones and zeros that you get on the disc.
But it's not the same because the discs are a limited item, and there's no limit to how many digital codes there can be. So there is no inherent value to them. That's how it works. Like that's why that argument is very difficult to make fly. And the reason that you have other countries like in Europe that end up with this being an issue for consumer rights that the companies then have to come up with a solution for is because those rights already applied to physical products and they never made a distinction between physical products and digital products. Whereas here, we don't have those rights at all for anything. It's just sort of a gray area at best. So you would have to basically revamp that part of the law code to give us the rights to do that with physical things and then extend it to digital things, and it's kind of too late for that. Like the reason consumers in those other countries have that right is because no one got around to changing it to exclude digital stuff, and the language of the old thing clearly made it so it just includes all things that are sold, kind of thing. Now that was like one of those few instances where lawmakers being so slow to understand and catch up with how the internet and digital things worked in our favor. And you're probably never going to get that again. Like that's what I'm saying is like that kind of got grandfathered in, so to speak, and in those countries. And to do that here would take like basically a consumer rights revolution that I just don't think is in the cards. Not in the next 15, 20 years, anyway.
That's really depressing and disappointing.
I would be stunned if you. I mean, and also keep in mind, Microsoft tried to bring that in. Microsoft tried to make that a feature of the Xbox One, and everybody shat on the floor and told them to go fuck themselves. So good luck getting another company to try that voluntarily again.
Well, Microsoft was taking away consumer rights, though.
But they were also, in exchange, they were going to let you sell your digital games back to their own storefront for credit. That was one of the trade-offs.
I didn't remember that.
Yes,
actually.
there was going to be a way of kind of selling, trading. Not, I mean, you weren't going to sell them in, because the thing about why it's worth something to sell a disc to someone, like to a third party, is because they can then take that physical object and sell it to someone else. Well, you can't really sell a digital code to someone back to like the company, and then they take that because they don't take that code and give it to someone else. They just have another code they give to someone. There's no limitation of resources. But they're going to do a thing where basically you could turn in a digital game you didn't use anymore for some credit on their store. I mean, you couldn't take that cash out of the ecosystem, but you could get some credit towards another game.
Yeah.
And that was part of the plan on the fairly draconian DRM system they wanted to put in. Also, keep in mind the trade-off on that was making the discs worthless, because once you loaded the disc in, it basically took the key off it, and that disc couldn't be used for anything else again.
Right.
It was basically treating the discs as a disposable key delivery device, which, by the way, we have gotten used to on the Switch now, because those game boxes often contain nothing.
I know.
Except a code.
It's pretty crazy.
So it's a weird, slow, horrible, monstrous morphing, like slowly lurching towards that digital future, and I don't really know what the shape is going to be when they get there, but we're going to see it take shape over the next generation.
It's going to have to.
And all three of them are going to have their own idea of what it should be, so it's going to be interesting to see what Microsoft, Sony's, and Nintendo's different visions for what that digital world should be, and which one gains
I can tell you right now, I do not want to see Nintendo.
No, I mean, I would agree with that. especially because
my bet is that they will be the least consumer friendly of the three.
Well, definitely. And also, one of the problems is, of course, because Nintendo doesn't consider themselves to be necessarily in competition with the other two,
right?
And the other two don't consider Nintendo to be in competition so much as the second system.
Yeah.
They don't have any reason. Nintendo doesn't really have any reason to keep up with the Joneses on that. Like Microsoft and Sony are going to go back and forth on what their infrastructures and online ecosystems are going to be, whereas Nintendo's just like, you want to play Link to the Past? Cough it up, motherfucker. You know, it's like they got all the cards on that one, because you're not into the Nintendo ecosystem for video games in general. You're there for Nintendo games, and everything else is gravy. Microsoft and Sony are competing to be the way you consume a medium. So it's going to be very interesting to see, whether, Microsoft's like kind of like OS-driven corporate, Silicon Valley style is the thing, or Sony's, Mark Cerny tech genius by way of weird Japanese Sony ideas becomes the thing. It's, or maybe it's something completely different, and we are highly underestimating Tommy Tallarico's in television. We don't know. We just don't know yet.
Okay. On that note, we'll move along. That conversation went on a lot longer than I thought, but that's kind of how things go, though. It's like we kind of find like an angle on something.
Well, we ain't going to talk for an hour about Code Vein.
That's for sure. Okay. Up next, we're going to talk about Nintendo, as if we hadn't talked about them enough already in this episode. We're going to talk about the Switch Lite. So the Nintendo Switch Lite, brand new product. I will fully cop to the fact that I thought it was just going to set the sales charts ablaze. It was going to be the best-selling platform of this year easily. Pachter thought it was Nintendo's path to riches beyond any comprehension. He felt like it was going to double the sales of Switch that it had been seeing up until this point. However, the first week of sales from the UK have come in. We haven't got MPD stuff for the US yet. But the first sales came in from the UK, and Nintendo sold 13,500 units in the first week.
That's not great.
Why do you think this happened?
I think a lot of people think their current Switch is good enough. And
do you think Nintendo's reached saturation with Switch?
No, but I think for the price point, it's not really worth a second Switch to people. Also, like, I know I would have been concerned about transferring my stuff. I don't know how that works with that. Like, if the account thing, just you sign and you get the thing, or it's tied to the hardware or whatever. Nintendo's got a weird track record on that. And as for like, I don't think there's a widespread thing, because I think this is more of a hardcore, fan who pays attention thing. I ain't buying that thing until I know whether those Joy-Cons drift or not.
Yeah.
Frankly, I know somebody took it apart and it looks like they modified it a little bit, but we don't know yet. Like, and you can't take those off. You have to send the whole unit back.
Yeah, it's not like a Joy-Con.
No way in hell.
Snap it off and they can send you
I
a new
wouldn't
one.
buy it anyway because I don't use them handheld, and it's even smaller, so it's even more useless to me. I do like that there's an actual D-pad on it.
Yeah,
that's great. I also don't like any of the colors.
I don't either.
I think normally I would just get the dark one, but I think that gray looks terrible with the light gray buttons and everything.
Yeah.
Yellow. I don't want a yellow thing, and the blue's nice, but like
the blue is the only one I would buy.
Blue's the closest I would consider. But I don't know. Like I don't have any use for it. And I wonder if you're someone who's a big hardcore Switch portable user, clearly that works for you. So why would you spend another couple $100 on getting another thing that does this? The battery life's better, but it's like I just don't think the value is there for someone who already owns a Switch. And if someone who doesn't own a Switch at all yet, I feel like you look at that and you're like, well, I'm losing all these features that I'd rather have on the main console.
So you think people are more than willing to spend an extra $100 to be able to dock it and play it on a TV?
I guess so, or just to be able to detach things and use like all the Labo stuff and all the. There's a lot of features you lose when you no longer have detachable.
No, you're right. They've been showing the ironic part is they show in this commercial for Switch Lite some features that like you can't use anymore because it's a Switch Lite, where they had like the tablets stacked on the table. Like you can't do that with a Switch Lite now.
Or you can't play that Ring thing.
Yeah, Ring Fit Adventure.
Yeah, you can't play that with this.
They took out the IR stuff in the controllers, although that seems to be
makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because it's not really. It's kind of an underused feature anyway.
Yeah, I think they should sell just regular Joy-Con sets with that stripped out for cheaper.
Oh, I'd agree. I'd agree with that.
$80 for a set of Joy-Cons is crazy.
It's absurd, honestly.
I mean, it surprises me that this hasn't actually sold better. I mean, I don't know how. I'm assuming the UK sales translate by ratio to the rest of the world. Who knows?
For the most part, I mean, I would say this, like Nintendo.
If they didn't, I assume Pactor would have said something about
Yeah,
it.
I mean, look, I would say this. The UK is not necessarily Nintendo land. PlayStation typically does the best there if you look at generation after generation. But if you look at, like, software sales charts over the last, like, year plus, Nintendo's games generally dominate the UK sales charts on a weekly basis.
Yeah. That also means that all those people already have a Switch.
That's true. Yeah.
So.
Do you think it's just a case where it just took off so big that people who want them have them now?
Maybe. I mean, and also just it's not a minor chunk of change, in today's economy. Like it's a special purchase for most people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And now they're asking you to do it again.
Yeah.
In like 2 years.
I mean, I don't think that Nintendo's intent was that. I mean, even though Nintendo has said, like, we want there to be 3 Switches in each house.
Right.
I don't think realistically Nintendo released this thinking that everyone who owns a Switch is going to buy a second one.
No.
They just wanted to provide an
clearly
alternative.
It fell short.
Yeah, they wanted to provide a cheaper alternative for people who wanted to play Switch games, but were like, you know what, $300, little steep for me. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. Like, I saw that number and my eyeballs went, what? 13,500 units?
Yep.
That's insane.
There were two crazy sales numbers I saw this week, and that was one of them.
What was the other one?
The other was for the recall of the GameStop exclusive Fallout 76 helmet.
Oh yeah,
where they did the
yeah.
It was a special Nuka-Cola version of the one with the wearable helmet, and it turned out that the helmets were growing like this toxic mold in them, so they had to recall them. And then Polygon updated the story and said we were contacted by the manufacturer of the helmets. They said that they made 20,000 of them, but only 32 were sold. I would buy. I mean, I don't have any interest in a Switch Lite. I would buy the like a Pro, like a console version with more power. But
yeah, I
think I'm in the minority on that.
I got past launch week. Usually that launch week is when I'm the weakest and I'm most likely to buy something. And once I made it past that, now it's like...
I didn't even know
I mean, I already own a Switch. It's redundant to me to buy something that's just portable.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it. And the screen's smaller and it's missing a bunch of features. But anyway,
and those Joy-Cons, you just don't know.
Yep, you don't know. So, yeah, I don't see myself buying a Switch Lite. They're going to have to put out a different color for that to happen for me. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it... I don't know if Nintendo will do that for another year or so. We'll see. Maybe when a big game comes out, they'll create like a special edition.
Purple, I might get one. I do a pearlescent purple with gold glitter effects. I'll get that.
Because my guess is that they'll eventually start putting out special editions for big game releases.
Yeah.
Like they'll put out like a Zelda one eventually or a Super Mario.
I'm surprised we haven't heard about a Pokemon one.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising. And they already have the yellow too.
Yeah.
Like all they had to do was just put Pikachu's little
just
mug
put
on
eyes on the back of that thing.
It'd be good. You're done.
2 eyes and the little blushy cheek circles, and you're good.
Yep, you're all done. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Mafia. Mafia 4 is in development. Do you think that's a good idea, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like this series has always done just well enough to not die.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, you're right. That's a good way to put it. All the way from the first one, really.
Yeah, I mean, I like them all. I like all 3 of them. But they just never seem to hit like the critical mass you would need to justify the amount of time and money that goes into these things. Although, I mean... the
last game was like pretty high quality.
Was pretty high quality, and it was Hayden Blackman was involved. He works with them on that up in Marin, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the developer. But they seem pretty happy with it overall. So it doesn't super surprise me they're doing another one of these. I'm interested to see what their angle is because the first 2 were done in 2K Brno. Yeah, Brno. It was in Czech Republic, and so this one was American made, and I think with a lot of input though.
Hangar 13.
Hangar 13. That's right.
Mafia 3. Yeah.
And I liked it. I mean, it told an interesting sort of crime story with like, the veteran coming home and being kind of driven to it because there was no other opportunity because he lives in the low income area and kind of the racism keeps that whole population like stuck in that what would probably become a ghetto at some point. It's a different like organized crime story than like the standard New York Mafia or Chicago Mafia stories they've told in the previous two games. So I thought that was interesting. It was a social angle you didn't see very often in games. Focusing on that, and I also liked the main character. I did not finish it because I found like after about 10 hours you'd seen everything the game had to do about 5 times over, and there just
wasn't enough meat on the bone.
It just became this giant map to like check off all the boxes on, and I was like, well, I've seen the story, I don't really need to do all these side missions that are the same thing 40 times. So my main request for a new one would be like come up with more things to do, but like I think in terms of tone and storytelling and concept, they've got it. So I would like to see what they do next. I'm glad they didn't get shut down or all fired or thrown out like Telltale did or something. Like you never know when your last game's going to be these days.
How do you feel about the time period?
I like it. I mean,
because the last one was more modern day.
Yeah, I mean they were all. I mean, I think the first two were more like post war.
Right.
The first one was like 1910s, 1920s. Second one I think was post World War II, and this one was more post
Vietnam. Right.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to do something like this, like kind of the veteran falls into crime thing for like a Desert Storm veteran in the 90s.
That's a good idea, actually.
Because frankly, that's getting old now. It's like, I mean, look, if you were in Desert Storm and you came back in your late 20s from that with Desert Gulf Syndrome or whatever, like all that stuff.
PTSD.
Some kind of PTSD. Like you are now in your what? You're almost 50.
Yeah, it's true. For me though, it's like when I think about the Mafia, I don't think about the mob, if that makes sense. Like to me, the mob is like the modern Mafia. When I think about Mafia, I think about like the 40s and the 50s and
right. You think about Godfather.
Yeah.
Or Goodfellas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to me. I mean, I don't know. I would prefer... So the first two games were set in the periods that make more sense to me. Mm-hmm. But the game design for those was not great.
No.
They were pseudo open world games.
Yeah, they didn't do anything. Their open worlds were amazing, but there was nothing to do
in them. Yeah, they were just
similar
dead.
to L.A. Noire.
Yep, you're right. That's a good comparison. This last one, the open world was much better, but I didn't care as much about the plot and the setting and the characters as I did. It was fine, but when I think about Mafia, that's not what I think of.
I mean, you're right that the word Mafia means a specific thing. Which generally isn't what Mafia 3 was about, but taking it as shorthand for like organized crime story, like I can get behind that. And it's like you got to lean on your known IP as much as you can, but you can't just tell the same story over and over again with the same setting. So I understand why they moved it forward into a more of a, there's a little bit of first blood to that, like the Vietnam veteran coming back and not being accepted or having to like deal with
Rambo,
the world sort of thing. And so I get it. Like it wasn't super mafia related, but it did deal with underworld and organized crime stuff. And I think that's close enough. I mean, it's not like Yakuza always deals. I mean, they do always have Yakuza stuff in it, but a lot of it is being good at bowling and a lot of real estate transactions. Yeah, so I feel it's more of a tone setting title than a it tells you what it's going to be about in a kind of a thematic way more than a literal way, I guess at this point, which is a decent, I guess, trade-off for not telling the same story in the same period every time.
I think I would just like to see the older setting with the newer game design. Mm-hmm. When I think of Mafia, I think of like Gatling guns and like...
I would just like to see them not drop...
And fedoras.
I'd like to see them not drop the idea of kind of an angle on the organized crime story we hadn't seen before, which I think 3 got. Yeah. Which was like, you don't see a lot of games about, Black Vietnam veterans coming back and having to deal with the societal ills that force that demographic into doing some unsavory things and then becoming really, really good at it.
Yeah,
Like that's the thing is like I think the most defining thing about the Mafia games isn't even that they have to have the actual literal mafia as part of it. It has to be someone who ends up in that life with good intentions and ends up destroying themselves in the process.
You're right.
Which is pretty much Goodfellas when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
But it's a good template. Like you can't, it's the opposite of Godfather, where Godfather's more, earliest until the end of 2, beginning of 3. It's the story of someone who doesn't want to be part of that life but becomes part of that life and kills it. Like, Michael Corleone does it real well.
Owns it, yeah.
Until Congress comes after him. But, like, I would love to see some... I mean, you could do... if I was going to do something, like, kind of off the wall, I would maybe... focus on maybe you'd have to take it back, like, this is not a 7, you wouldn't be moving it forward, you're moving it back, you would be more of a period piece, but I would maybe focus on like the advent of the Chinese underworld on the West Coast, like in the wake of a lot of the railroad building and forced labor that happened around there in the late 1800s, and sort of how that all sort of rose up and became a thing. That would be an interesting, like, story that I don't think we've really seen before. I mean, there's been games that tried to tell that, but they never got made. They never got there. Like, something along the lines of I'm blanking on the name. The Hong Kong open world GTA game where you play as the completely undercover cop. I played that like 4 times. I can't remember the name.
I can't remember.
Sleeping Dogs.
Sleeping Dogs. Yeah, that's it.
I know that it takes place in Hong Kong, not America, but like I think that like a San Francisco-based thing.
Hey, the delay on our stream isn't as bad as it used to be. Have you noticed that?
Oh,
like we can ask stuff and literally like it'll show up in the chat within like 3 or 4 seconds now instead of waiting like 20 seconds for the delay. It's much better. So, are you okay with the same developer working on the next one? Like, I think
Sure.
I think it did a pretty good job.
I think they did good. I think it needed refinement, but that's what the sequel's for, right?
Yeah.
I think I even said it at the time. I'm like, it's a pretty solid starting point, and if they get to make another one, not a fourth one because they've only made one, but like if they get to make 4, I'm pretty excited to see what, because usually you get that, like when a developer takes over a series or starts a new series, the first game is sort of like, it works, they got it working, but then the second game is sort of, they get to do all the things, they get to refine it, but they also get to do all the things they had to cut from the first game. And so you sort of get a more complete. Assassin's Creed 2, I think, would be one of the biggest examples of that. Is like you play Assassin's Creed 2 and you're like, oh, this is what you were trying to do.
Right, this is what you're trying to do. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be very interested to play another Mafia from Hangar 13. I think they got good people. I also like Hayden Blackman's writing. I've always liked Hayden Blackman's writing, and like he's obviously very involved. I think he's one of the studio heads. I liked, as much as I thought Force Unleashed was a bad game, I thought the storytelling was pretty good, and that was where he was more in charge. He's a good writer. So, yeah, bring it on, I say.
Probably going to be a bridge game that comes out.
Did they say, like, when there's any kind of window?
No, but my guess is it'll
sometime?
Probably come out right around the new consoles come out, and it'll be one of those games.
It is kind of, isn't that funny, where it is kind of handy sometimes if you're sort of like a maybe a B tier open world game, if you can get in there at system launch, like
perfect.
Yeah, because all the big boys are probably not going to have.
Oh, no
ready.
way!
So
it's not like there's going to be a new GTA.
Look what it did for Watch Dogs, and they came out like 6 months after the systems came out.
Absolutely. So it would be a smart tactic. The time frame seems to be working out, the timeline for game development and finishing that game. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I'm just glad they're still there and doing stuff. Frankly,
yep.
I thought they tried some interesting stuff in that game. It didn't all work out, but like I liked the heart in it.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about The Last of Us Part 2. If you guys were along with us for the ride last week, we watched Sony State of Play live with you guys, where they kind of blew out all the information about The Last of Us Part 2, and then. After we got out of here, like the footage just started rolling in, the preview started rolling in, and then more like trickling in over the next couple of days was news from Naughty Dog. And probably the biggest nugget that Naughty Dog shared over the following several days was that there will be no multiplayer mode in The Last of Us Part 2. A lot of people, I think, look at Naughty Dog's games as single-player games. Mm-hmm. But I feel like fans who actually buy Naughty Dog's games are kind of tied into those multiplayer modes. They seem to like them a good bit, and it's pretty obvious a lot of work has gone into them in the past, but Naughty Dog has decided to bail. What do you think that means for the game?
I think it means it's a single-player game.
But do you think it's a lot big? My guess is it's a lot bigger.
Yeah, well, they said it's the biggest thing they've ever made.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that part.
Yeah.
But my guess is it's going to be like God of War, like Red Dead Redemption 2 size.
They said it's the biggest thing they've ever made by far.
But you got to realize most of their games are like 14 hours long.
Yeah, but Druckmann talked on Twitter in response to this about how, like, no, this thing's huge. Like, this is a 30, 40-hour game.
Okay.
And that they are going, and even
so it's not really like Red Dead size. It's like God of War size.
Yeah, it's God of War size, I'd say.
That's still great.
And also, like, they said, like, we're gonna do this. They're gonna do the multiplayer as a separate project. There will be a factions standalone game at some point.
A standalone game
That's what they
that
said.
has nothing to do with this.
It won't be
not this.
It won't be
Last
Last
of
of
Us
Us. It won't be Last of Us 2. No, but it'll be like Last of Us factions or something. Maybe a separate.
Really,
thing.
I missed that somehow.
That was part of the original statement I read. Like they're like, we're going to work on something that will come back. We're not like getting rid of it, but it's just not part of Last of Us 2.
Do you think it will affect sales at all?
No, not remotely.
Not in the least bit.
Nope.
Because I know we talked about it last week a little bit, and there was a lot of people in the chat that were like, "Oh, I love Uncharted's multiplayer, or I love The Last of Us multiplayer."
Oh, sure, but are you going to pass up on The Last of Us 2 because you don't get that with it? No. Like, maybe you'll buy it physically and sell it back afterwards, but, like, it sure is only going to stop me. Like, and it makes sense to, like, focus all your resources on this one thing. If you're really making something as ambitious and big as 2 seems to have turned out to be, it makes sense to focus. And then you make this as a separate thing. You probably make it as this could be some kind of like next year after PS5 launch sort of standalone thing, and like you could do a game as a service element to it. I mean, they certainly had plenty of microtransactions in the original. They actually had some problems balancing that, I think.
Yeah. They did.
I mean, it makes and who knows? Maybe it was more of a directive from Sony being like, hey, it would be nice to have this as sort of more of a separate thing where we could kind of monetize it a little more heavily, maybe make it free to play, something like that.
And just sell cosmetics, I guess.
Yeah. And use the Last of Us name to sort of draw you in. And especially if we're seeing this looks fine and everything, but imagine like something like this, but using sort of that more desperate, more hyper violent like stuff we've seen in the trailers for 2.
Well, I think my problem with the multiplayer in The Last of Us was I did not feel like it had the same tone as the campaign.
No, it didn't. Yeah,
it just seemed like this kind of generic multiplayer suite, but it didn't really. It didn't feel like you were doing in the multiplayer what you did while you played the game.
What if it's Battle Royale?
Oh God!
What if that's Sony's like throwing her hat in the ring on Battle Royale?
Standalone game.
Standalone Last of Us Battle Royale.
I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, it's called The Last of Us.
It really is. That's hilarious.
You are The Last of Us.
Right.
Come on, like that's as good.
That's
as...
Battle Royale written all over. They don't have to change the name or anything.
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, it is possible. That would be crazy.
I mean, it feels like the trend is sort of over a little bit, but like,
is it? That is actually a good question. Is it over?
I don't know.
Is Battle Royale over now?
I don't think it's over. I mean, obviously the player bases are stronger than ever, but like, I don't know. The question is there room for anyone to horn in on it after Apex Legends sort of did what it did?
Yeah.
And flared up and faded out a little bit, and like now we're all back in Fortnite with Batman.
But like, no, you're right. It's kind of come back around.
That's interesting. Batman and Thanos have both been in Fortnite.
I mean, everyone's going to be in that game.
One of the only indirect more Marvel DC crossover in like the last 20 years.
And it probably will be the last one in the next 20 years.
God, there was a time. There was a time they did that all the time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they were much more friendly.
Yeah,
in prior days.
The distinguished competition.
Yep, absolutely.
But,
so you don't think this will impact sales at all?
Not at all. I mean, God of War didn't.
Yeah, but you never expected God of War to have multiplayer.
I never expected Last of Us 2 to have multiplayer until like someone brought it up.
Oh, I did. I mean, I just assumed because it was in the first one that, I mean, it's not very often that a game has multiplayer and then a sequel doesn't have it. In fact, I don't know if I can think of any games that or franchises that have done that. Can you?
Done what?
That had multiplayer and then took it away later on?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I mean, God of War, because Ascension had multiplayer.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot about that god-awful multiplayer that Ascension had.
Everybody forgets about Ascension.
Yeah.
God of War Ascension and Gears of War Judgment are the two games everyone forgets.
Yeah.
Like little spin-off prequels that everyone forgets.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it was a great loss. Wolfenstein. The Wolfenstein games don't have multiplayer anymore.
That's true. Yeah. And instead they made a separate co-op game.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like what Naughty Dog is about to do
I'll
with
bet.
The Last of Us. So maybe that's just the trend now is like finish your single-player campaign. If you do want to do multiplayer, well, you can just put that out all on its own now. You don't really have to...
Uncharted Lost Legacy didn't have multiplayer.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was kind of running parallel to 4, which had it.
Right.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't have a tremendous perspective on this because I don't care about multiplayer.
I honestly don't care either because I didn't like the multiplayer in the first Last of Us. I think I played it for like a day or 2 days.
But it's like if you really were, if multiplayer not being in is like a make or break for you, and you look at those trailers and you're like, whatever. If I can't beat people up with a stick, I don't care. Clearly that wasn't a game for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how prevalent that'd be. I think people are on board to experience this as what it's being sold as, which is a big cinematic experience.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect sales at all either. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but yeah, it's people. I think the other part of it too is, and I don't think this was intentional, but people have waited so long for this game now that they're just kind of in this state where they'll just take whatever they can get. They're so desperate to play it, like.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good take what you can get looking at those trailers.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the game's gonna.
But people forget,
like
you forget that like that. You know, Last of Us 1 was last gen.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Last of Us 1 was on the PS3.
I mean, it's crazy to think about. We have only got one so far, but we're only going to get 2 Naughty Dog games this entire generation.
Yeah, unless you count
that spin-off.
Unless you count the spin-off. I mean, I think the spin-off's better than Uncharted 4. So.
It's not as big though. It's much.
It's
shorter.
not, but it's
like a DLC episode.
Better.
Yeah, but
it's a better story, better pacing, better everything, and Chloe feels about Sam Drake the same way I do, so that helps a lot.
Naughty Dog is getting to Rockstar North output levels here.
Oh, in terms of quality or in terms of how long it takes?
How long it takes to put out a game.
Well, I think part of that is like, I mean, Uncharted 4 wasn't, and Lost Legacy weren't that long ago. And I think you're running into the issue of like there was that big kind of shakeup there where Hennig left and brought some of her people with him, and they kind of had some reorganization.
That really
happening.
seemed to have kind of ruined this generation for Naughty Dog.
I think it threw quite a wrench into things.
Yeah, having to redo a lot of the stuff for Uncharted 4 after she left, and any of the pre-pro that they had done on The Last of Us before she left that she was involved in. Although I don't know if there was much of that, but
but like they say, well, according to some of the people that were working on the motion capture actors and stuff, some of them said like they completely reshot it from the beginning, and like roles changed, actors didn't come back for things, like it was a whole different thing. It still really seems like they added Sam Drake so that Neil could work with his buddy Troy Baker again.
Yeah.
God, I hate Sam Drake. Like, I really can't. I really cannot emphasize how much I hate Sam Drake. But again, that's why I like Lost Legacy, because Lost Legacy also hates Sam Drake. So.
So anyway, you know what? If they had to cut multiplayer to finally get this game out, I'm all for it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and I'm guessing that's probably what happened. They're like, you know what? We've got to release this game, and the multiplayer is going to tack on an extra however many months to development. Let's just get the campaign out there.
Remember when they first announced this thing, and I said it was going to be out in like 2019, and you thought that was crazy. You thought it was like a year out or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope.
But I think that backs up what I just said about how their output has changed so drastically this generation.
But I didn't surprise me. I mean, I figured it was going to take them how long it took them, especially because now Neil Druckmann was sort of running the whole show, and he can only supervise so much at one time. And especially because he clearly had to shepherd Uncharted 4 to completion. It seems like he didn't have to be quite so hands-on with Lost Legacy. I can't remember who headed that up.
I don't remember either.
It was somebody else, but he did a very good job, and then was able to focus on that. But it was clear to me that Last of Us 2 was way, way out when all they showed was that pre-rendered guitar scene. I'm like, oh, that's years and years away. So I just had arguments this week online with people who were convinced that Starfield is coming next year, and that like Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be like 2021.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Like, if Starfield's out in 2021, it'll be a minor miracle, and Elder Scrolls 6 is halfway through the next decade, no question. To the point that it went back and forth so much that I made a bet that I said, if Starfield comes out in 2020, I will buy it for you.
Oh.
Like, I have no doubt in my mind we will not see Starfield at launch for the. I mean, I'd love it because I'd love to play. But those two games are some of my most anticipated games. I'd love to play them sooner. Although with the caveat that I don't think rushing to Bethesda game is a very good idea.
I think that
they're buggy enough as it is when they take their time.
Yeah.
Just release Skyrim again, I guess.
They will. Anytime they need to refill the coffers, they're like, is there a platform that doesn't have Skyrim yet? Come on, surely there's one.
Yeah. And that's a good, Bearded Smurf makes a good point there. Like, that's a pretty good spread for game releases.
3 years from
2013, 2016,
look,
2017.
No, see, I don't count. Look, Lost Legacy, that's not like a separate release. It's 4 years between releases from Uncharted 4 to The Last of Us 2. That's a long time.
Not with that kind of fidelity, really. I mean, look how long it takes them to do stuff like...
Fire Native says Oya doesn't have Skyrim yet.
Oya doesn't have anything. I have an Oya.
Oya doesn't have an Oya. The Oya's gone. It's done. That's hilarious.
I mean, this is like top level prestige AAA game making.
They're in Rockstar territory.
What was Sucker Punch's last game? A launch title for the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Second Son.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah,
like stuff takes time.
4 years.
We can't all be Insomniac.
Well, I mean, the other thing, too, is that it has...
Insomniac makes stuff, like, fast.
I mean, the other thing... You're right. The other thing, too, though, is that it's not really been 4 years. It's been a lot longer since The Last of Us 1 came out. And
right.
They don't have just one team there. It's not like they finished Uncharted and then everybody moved over to The Last of Us.
They had to make the remaster and all that.
Yeah.
I do think at some point it got to be pretty much all hands on deck for Uncharted 4.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you finish a game, that's pretty much the last year or whatever.
That doesn't always happen with multiple teams. Usually the teams get pretty separate. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that I think a company-wide effort happened to get Uncharted 4 done in a reasonable amount of time. Because if that thing slipped to 2017 and then you had Lost Legacy, I mean, it all backed up until we... Because I do think it was made imperative to them that they get Last of Us 2 out before the PlayStation 5 launch.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because you want that...
I mean, I'm sure they were given that mandate a long time ago.
Yeah. You want those sales out there for the huge PlayStation 4 install base, but you also... And then, like, you can use the... I don't think they're going to do a remastered version. I think it's just going to be it'll look better on the new system.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think you also want it there to be, like, for comparison, you want everybody to have played it and know what it looks like and be like, now it looks like this on the new system. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, whatever it takes, I guess. But, like, it's hard to argue. It's, like, so much detail and so much time goes into these things with the way Naughty Dog does it. Like, just, like...
You can see it, though.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, just look at all the detail and all the little cans you're about to knock off that table and never look at again. Someone spent weeks on that.
Is it worth it?
No.
Yeah, it's really not. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, for the moments where you get to look at something and be like, wow, that's crazy. Look what they did there.
I think it might be worth it because stuff like that the critics pick up on, and the critics decide what game gets Game of the Year.
I mean, I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. Oh, hell no. I mean, if I would have been it, I have never had an interest in making games, ever.
It's just that, but the detail has to be there. It's like, I tell the story about that guy, friend of a friend, but he was in digital effects, and he desperately wanted to work on the Transformers. He loved Transformers. He wanted to work on Transformers. He got a job at ILM. Right as Revenge of the Fallen was happening, the second Michael Bay movie, and he got assigned to Transformers, and he was like, I get to work on Transformers, oh my God, I got to... And his job for 2 years was to model bricks falling off the Great Pyramid as Devastator. He didn't make a robot, he didn't design a Transformer, he didn't render anything but bricks falling off of a pyramid for 2 years. And I'm like, I couldn't.
It's a thankless job, honestly.
But those have to be there or it doesn't sell the shot. Like, you have to have those or the shot doesn't work. So it's not like it's not important.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But, like, you're
going to the theater to watch it with your family, you're like, there's my brick.
Are the games, is Uncharted 4 still going to sell the same number of copies if I can't read the words on the tomato paste can?
Yeah.
Probably.
But it's going back to what I was saying.
But that wouldn't be Naughty Dog, would it?
No, but I think critics do matter in some of those cases, and critics do notice that crap.
Somewhat.
And stuff like that goes a long way when you're talking about critics who play a ton of games all year.
I mean,
those little things that stand out.
Sony's throwing the money at it for, clearly they consider Naughty Dog their prestige studio.
Oh, sure.
Along with Sony Santa Monica. And sure, why not? Makes sense.
All right. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about something that's not quite as exciting, and that is Mario Kart Tour. Have you played this?
God, no.
Oh, you didn't play it. You didn't even try it.
No. Once I found out that you like don't really drive,
yeah,
like I was like, nah, I'm good.
So Mario Kart Tour is the first ever mobile Mario Kart game, and to me, a huge fan, longtime player of Mario Kart, it is a complete and utter travesty. It is awful.
You looked it.
Oh my gosh. Let me just start with the orientation.
Well, it's free to start.
No, right. Let me just start with the orientation. Who decided that playing Mario Kart vertically was a good idea?
Phone's gonna phone.
No, there are plenty of mobile games that you can play both ways.
But all of Nintendo's games are vertical.
They are.
So that must be a thing they think is important.
A thing. It's a thing that they think is a thing. I don't know why. A racing game where you need to see... Well, I mean, first of all, it's not really a racing game. It is like... If you play it, it's almost more like a fighting game where you're trying to build combos than like really race somebody. Mm-hmm. You do not even have to touch your phone to finish in the top 3 in this game. You don't have to touch it. The auto steer in this game is so generous that you can not touch your phone and you can place in the top 3 in a race, quote unquote race.
Wow.
Oh.
It looks nice.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Mario Kart. It plays nothing like Mario.
But I hear to get Mario, you have to either like buy some like starter bundle or hope you get a 0.1% drop from a loot box.
So it's a gacha game, which means it's all loot boxes.
Who do you start with? Like what you start?
Who did I even start with? It was like Toadette is who I started with. I mean, I don't know if it's different for everyone who plays it, but that's who they gave me first was Toadette.
So it's kind of like it looked to me like Fire Emblem, where like you're desperately hoping that you get characters you care about out of these loot boxes.
And if you don't, you need to pay $5 a month.
Right.
That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's a $5 a month gold plan, whatever. But you know me, I'm a gameplay first guy, and I was like, despite all this other crap, if it plays okay, whatever, I'm down. And it plays like trash. So you have to play with a touchscreen. And I never quite got to grips with how to control it, to be honest with you. But then at the end of the day, you don't really have to control it because it'll just guide you around the track all on its own. To me, it's like a slot machine. That's really all it is, with like a Mario Kart like veneer on it. There's no multiplayer.
Oh right, but like they name the opponents like fake internet names, don't they?
Yeah. Well, the multiplayer is supposed to be coming. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't there at launch.
That seems like a reason to delay the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mario Kart.
But if that's not ready, the game's not ready.
I mean, look, the reason why the auto steer is so generous is because the controls suck. I never came to grips with how to power slide or how to take turns. Like, it's like you tap left or right to turn, but then you have to like hold it and drag it to drift, and I could like never get it. I could never get it right.
You're not 9.
Yeah, I guess you tap up and down to fire weapons. But like you have to the gacha.
So slow.
Yeah, the gacha isn't just for characters though. It's for like everything. It's like all the power ups and all the other stuff you get. Like you need that stuff to progress through the game. It's awful. It's Nintendo's worst mobile game, in my opinion. And it hasn't been great at mobile games so far.
But it definitely seems to be the worst emulation of the game it's trying to capitalize on.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. Like, mobile is a different platform. People play it differently. People consume mobile gaming differently. I understand all that. I don't play a ton of mobile games, but I do know if a game is fun to play or not. And this game is not fun to play. Mm-hmm. I don't know how. It
doesn't look fun.
I mean, it's crazy. Look at it. How you look at it, it should just scream fun. Mm-hmm. It's Mario Kart. But look, you like the gliders, you have to count on getting good gliders, because really how you progress in this is like building up like your gear count, like your points. It's not about like finishing first or second in a race. It's about how many points you collect while you're racing. You can see the number rolling up there and like on the top right. That's what matters. And it changes the whole perspective of playing the game.
God, I can hear the like the sound effect when you get the item.
Yeah. But it's awful. I am. To me, Nintendo has not done great with mobile. Most of its mobile games have been passable. This game is not passable. It's not. The points,
ironically enough,
I mean, the points-driven gameplay just completely. It's not a racing game. I mean, that's the crazy part. It's a Mario Kart game. It's not a racing game.
There's Fire Emblem Heroes bugging me again right now, just now.
Oh, what, on your phone?
Yeah.
That's funny. Perfect timing there, anyway. But, yeah, I'm really disappointed in this. I did spend probably an hour and a half with it, something like that, and I just got to the point where I just didn't care anymore and stopped playing. So it is free to start, which is Nintendo's favorite thing with mobile.
Yep.
So you can go download it right now from the App Store, and you can play it, and you can find out, just like I did, that it wasn't worth the bandwidth. Especially with the way they're throttling my mobile phone now. I feel cheated at this point.
Who do you think would pay a monthly fee to play a Mario Kart game on a phone?
I really don't know, man. I really don't know.
Like, that's my big question.
I don't know. I would rather pay $5 for the game and have it be a real Mario Kart. How about that? I'm down with that. Like, I'd be fine with that. I would have paid $5 for a good Mario Kart mobile. But you're asking $5 a month from me just so the game may or may not be tolerable? Wrong. Pass. Not going to happen. So, yeah.
And that's how you race with 200cc.
Oh, you have to pay for it. You have to pay. The 200cc doesn't unlock until you pay the $5. But again, like, the motor classes don't really matter like they usually do, because they're not really it's not really a racing game. Like,
Even just watching that footage, like, it just felt like it was going so slow.
Yeah, I mean, but 50cc does feel slow, even in the console Mario Karts. Like, if you're watching it, it seems like you're just inching along. And the lack of multiplayer at launch is insane. I mean, that's what Mario Kart is known for, is multiplayer. Nobody's like, I can't wait to go play the Grand Prix. Like, that's not what people say about Mario Kart. They can't wait to race and battle their friends. That's what people care about. So there you go, Mario Kart Tour, the first Mario Kart for mobile. And based upon how this one turned out, it very well might be the last. Yeah. All right. We're going to move on to the last topic of today's show, and it's going to be kind of brief because I have not had a chance to play the final version, but Matt has. We're going to talk about Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I did play the beta.
Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. I continually find out because it keeps filing the damn thing under T.
Yeah.
Well, play Ghost Recon. Where's the Ghost Recon?
I guess that contract isn't satisfied quite yet. I mean, they'll probably always leave it in there because they did pay so much for that license in the first place.
Ghost of Tom Clancy Recon.
Yeah, pretty much. So Matt and I delivered our impressions after we played the beta, and I think both of us mostly liked it.
I liked it.
I was disappointed that it wasn't more like kind of how it was marketed when it was first shown off. It is more like Wildlands than I think most people want to admit, or
not me.
Yeah.
Ubisoft doesn't fool me anymore.
Yeah.
I know what they're pushing.
But so anyway, Matt, you started playing the early access version last night. Ubisoft sent me my review code this morning, so I have not had a chance to play the final version. Maybe instead of just going back over the whole thing again, you just talk about the things that you noticed that were different from when we played it before.
Well, not a lot.
Really?
So now I'm playing on the Xbox One X. I played the beta on the PS4 Pro. Very similar. I did start on so I started on graphic fidelity, and as a matter of fact, this is the opening cutscene that plays when you first start the game. These cutscenes chugged under graphic fidelity, like the pan across the
So wait,
facility and
they're
everything.
real time.
I think they are because the frame rate was tanking. Which explains a lot because like actually in the cutscenes you are wearing all your custom clothing and stuff, even when in that story stuff. So I guess they are all real time. But yeah, it was chugging like crazy, and once I got on the ground and was running around, like it was chunky. Like it was not unplayable, but like I switched to the options were now graphical fidelity and resolution. I want to feel like it said performance on the beta.
I don't remember.
But I switched over to resolution. And played way better.
Oh, wow.
Smooth as silk after that, with a few exceptions.
Well, there's a pro tip for you.
So I definitely would play.
Are you playing on an X?
Yeah. So I would definitely play on resolution, not graphics fidelity. It looks fine on resolution. I don't notice a massive difference. It's mostly just like ground clutter and like some minor details. And other than that, like everything's pretty much like this. The screen tearing's still there. All the typos are still there in the subtitles and stuff. The only thing I really noticed they fixed was the depth of field problems in the cutscene. So I specifically got through all the missions that were in the beta to see, because that one cutscene on the dock with the guy,
old man,
the older guy with his son or his daughter. Those were the ones where your character was in focus and he was out of focus. Yeah, and they fixed that. That was true on Xbox and PS4. I know that, but like that was fixed. Everything else is pretty much all the weird little glitches and weird little like presentational problems are all the same as they were in the beta. Down to the subtitles calling grunts grounds.
Oh jeez.
And weird little wrong words in the subtitles. I normally don't use subtitles, but I was using this because I was just listening to other things while playing it because I already played this part.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty much the same. I will say that I think I'm playing on normal just like I did in the beta. I will say that I think the enemies seem a little smarter
than they were in the beta.
I mean, I still have a couple things where I just was able to kind of hole up in one place and let them all come to me and headshot them as they came up, and I just took the whole facility out by doing that. But there are a couple higher, like bigger facilities where like I made a mistake early on trying to get in, and they saw where I was, and they chased me around the perimeter and like held me down with mortar fire.
Wow.
And like some guy came out and like came out front and all the way around and flanked me on the side, and I had no idea who was coming at me from that side. I've been gotten killed probably as many times in half the gameplay time of the beta as I have in the whole beta.
Oh wow!
So I've been killed a few times.
You mean in the final version?
In the final version,
died a lot more. Yeah.
So I've died several more times than I did in the beta, and not like in like stupid like weird ways, but in like, oh yeah, they got me. Like okay, like I get it, and then I have to approach that in a different manner. So I'm actually kind of happy with that. Like, I don't know if that's just like a coincidence of like what angle I approached what area at.
Could be.
I came at a different angle than I did on the other ones. But it felt like I wasn't up against quite so brain dead AI. Not brilliant, but like, you know, there's still things where I'm like having a huge shootout with guys and another patrol just sort of drives by 10 feet away and ignores it completely.
Oh, sometimes you're thankful for that, though.
Yeah, I'm not arguing all the time.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty much the same. It is nice to have the whole map available. Like I got a faction thing that like happened like way down in the crazy like southwest corner, and I'm like, screw it, I'm just gonna grab a helicopter and fly out there, and I did the thing, came back, it was great, you know. Got a fast travel point down there. You know, it's nice to open up the map. It's nice to play it and like know that my progress counts this time.
Yeah. You never want to go too far in betas because you're like, man, I'm just wasting my time. Yeah. I'm not gonna get it back.
So yeah, I mean, if there were things, if you play the beta and were like, oh, this feels kind of rough, it still feels kind of rough.
It does.
It definitely feels like whether I don't know whether it's going to be like improved over the next coming months or if there's a quote unquote day one patch.
I'm sure there
Friday.
Will be. Yeah.
You know, you might be in a situation where you're paying extra money for early access because you get the early access through the deluxe version and the crazy $120 version or whatever. But you get early access for those, so you might be maybe paying extra money to beta test it a little bit.
Yeah,
that seems to be more and more the trend with these early access things. Is not just you get to play it early, but you also get to play like a, you know, kind of an early version in the worst sense of the term.
Did you play with anyone else?
No, I did not in my team. Although obviously there are tons of people hanging around Erewhon, the you know, the homesteaders sort of like home base.
So there are enough people playing right now.
There are a lot of people. It was full again. Full of, you know, if you're just gonna leave your fucking character idle in the home base playing heavy metal through your speakers, bite me.
Yeah,
it's so
a lot of people
dumb.
do that, man. Or hip hop.
And it's
one or the other. It's
and I
metal
went back
or hip hop.
and I went back and forth to the base, turn in quests or get whatever. And every time the same guy was still standing there next to the shop blasting some like unintelligible
They leave and
death
like
metal.
go out to school for the day and just leave it.
But they're
sitting
doing something because otherwise it disconnects you for idle. So like
Does it?
Yeah. So they're setting it up. They're setting it up to like hold the camera down or something, because otherwise they'll boot you after like 10 minutes.
You're right. They probably tape the one analog stick to the
just
side
to make sure
so
everyone hears their shitty music. Minor annoyance.
Yeah.
And there's like moments where I'm like, is that in the game or is it in? And then I realize like, oh, is it in the game or is it from a player? I'm like, oh, it must be the player because the surround is way better on this.
Right.
Because that radios actually kind of have terrible surround and fade out wrong, but the players sound right there.
Yeah.
Boom. I still think that's weird that like you're sitting around and everyone's just like, oh, we're so desperate and no, we don't have enough men and we can't. It's like there's like 100 people all
standing by the bar
in identical gear. You're just like, all right. But I still, it's enjoyable. I picked a different class this time, so that's fun.
What did you do? What did you take?
I went with a stealth class this time.
Okay.
I did assault in the beta, and I'm doing and I realized like when I went to pick the class this time, I'm like, I snuck around a lot more than I expected to when I played the beta. So I'm just gonna pick the stealth class this time and see if. And it's definitely more my play style, at least solo. I would probably switch to assault if I were gonna play with a group, but or maybe the medic because it can do the group heal and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
did you make it farther in the campaign than you did? Did you make it past the point where the beta stopped?
Yeah, I made one mission past that.
Anything worth mentioning there?
I mean, no. It was literally just because after you do that the final mission there with a guy on the pier, you basically have to start trying to hunt down the head of the was it Jay Skell head, the Steve Jobs Jeff Bezos equivalent.
Yep.
Or Elon Musk, insert tech guru guy of your choice.
Insert tech billionaire.
Yeah, and the next step is just like finding this one particular guy you think might know where he is, and it's just a conversation. But once I was done, and then the servers went down.
Oh.
So for planned maintenance, it was like it gives you a countdown and everything. It wasn't an error or anything.
Someone's in our chat right now asking, like, does this play like Wildlands?
Exactly like
It plays exactly like it, but...
Except you don't have 3 other AI friends with you. You can do the sync shot if you get a consumable item, like a drone that's a consumable item. But you do not have companions in this. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. And sometimes when you get shot enough... You'll get an injury that blocks out one or more of your health bars that won't regenerate until you do a very long kind of animation of like bandaging it up. But I've done that in the middle of firefights and it hasn't been a thing.
They probably should have called this Wildlands 2.
They definitely could have called it Wildlands 2. That would have been a fair...
I think it would have been smarter to call it Wildlands 2.
Maybe so.
After the way the first game sold, like, why would you ditch that?
Maybe so.
That brand. The fact that someone's in our chat asking right now, like, hey, is it like Wildlands? Like, because that's what people want. A lot of people bought it and really liked it. They would like to play another game like that with a new quest and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, it's weird that they... Then, again, that's why I thought this game was going to have a different angle, a different bent to it than it does. But
Nope.
It's the same thing. So if you've been looking for Wildlands 2, here you go.
This is it.
Yeah.
I actually like it a little better. Just in the sense that
there are some subtle changes.
I think the setting's more interesting. I like. I know you're not a big fan of the drone stuff, but I think the idea of like the tech stuff going out of control is interesting. I love the fact that the thing keeping you from getting off the island is like swarms of drones that just like burrow through like
I like that too.
There's a lot of cool
there's
stuff
actually
here.
like a legitimate reason why you can't leave this time.
Like, take note, Far Cry team.
Right, seriously. Like, Far Cry is so absurd. It's like, just leave. What are you doing?
Get in a boat, go down the river, get to fucking Missoula or whatever, and bring the National Guard in.
Right, or just lay on a log and float down the river. You don't even need a boat. But this gives you a legitimate reason why they cannot leave.
Yeah.
And it's,
and a scary one, too.
It is,
It's an effective scene.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because the swarms are what take your choppers down at the beginning of the game. And watching the cutscene again, now that I'd played the game, I realized that that's what you're seeing do that. When I watched it originally, I thought it was just, they put flocks of birds in it.
No,
that's actually what's bringing each other. But I mean, your character's not supposed to know what that is when it happens.
Yeah,
so it's effective. But like, so yeah. I mean, I think they've done a pretty cool job here. I don't know if I'm gonna finish it because God, that game's huge.
It looks like it's gonna be ginormous.
But I can see myself in the same way I did with Wildlands, which I didn't get until it was very cheap. But I could see myself just sort of, periodically dipping into it because this isn't really one of those games like open world long games where like you start it up months later and not know what you're doing or remember how to do anything because it's very straightforward. It's just like, here's a world, go shoot things, go find loot, done.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And I'm kind of fine with that.
I mean, they're trying to make the plot something worth caring about this time, but I don't know. Based upon what I had played in the beta, I don't see that happening.
I mean, I'm looking forward to shooting the Punisher in the head and all.
Sure, yeah.
It's not high literature or anything, but it's good enough. In fact, I've already had some pretty cool firefights and shootouts with things, and trying to like be. I'm continually trying to be clever about how I infiltrate things and having to just go completely wrong, which is like the best part of open world stealth stuff is like having to improvise.
The best laid plans go awry. Absolutely. So, yeah, the game comes out Friday.
Yeah, officially Friday. Hopefully they'll have some more fixes in line. But, right now, if you played the beta, you pretty much know what this is, what you're getting into.
Yep.
So it's honestly identical except for that, as far as I can tell, except for that cutscene change. And they've become more efficient at killing me one way or the other. I don't know if there's like this scene where these guys all come at you in this one mission. They ran me over I was pretty much where you are here. They just came at me. They just ran me over. Like they just ran around. Like, they held me down like with the fire. I couldn't put my head up, and they just ran around the corner and just shot me in the head.
Wow.
Like they're very efficient. And then the second time I tried it, I just was able. I went back one more box and was able to just headshot them before they even got out of their vehicles. So I don't know. Maybe I was just trying to Rambo it too much, but like,
yeah, running out in this game is a sure way to get yourself killed.
Yeah,
you can't just run into stuff in this game. I
mean, you could. The other thing, of course, is when I was the assault class makes you a little more resistant to damage.
Yeah.
So that might have been maybe I might have been a little used to that. Like
yep.
I thought I could take more.
Not
hits.
as much armor. Yeah. But anyway, so this comes out Friday for PC, PS4, Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
I just got it this morning, and I had to do all the pre-production for GameFace. I didn't have a chance to play it.
Install the 40 gigs or whatever it is.
I'm going to have to clear some stuff off of my Pro at this point. It's at my hard drive's full
I had to
now.
clear some stuff off my Pro for Destiny.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even... I mean, I don't know when I'm going to get to that. I'm so far behind on all the Destiny stuff.
It would be awesome if you could play it before next week's show.
Probably not.
Yep. Well, both of us are going to play this, and we'll be definitely go far more in depth on it for next week's episode. But we just wanted to get something in your ear before you had to make the decision on Friday on whether you want to buy it or not. I guess the general consensus is if you like the beta, you're probably going to like the final game.
And it's just Wildlands 2.
Yeah, and it's Wildlands 2. Yep. And so if you liked Wildlands, the first one, you're probably going to love this one.
Yeah.
Because it does have some refinements over.
Yeah, it's definitely a smoother experience than Wildlands 1.
Yep.
Or it's just Wildlands. It's not Wildlands.
My guess is eventually they do make a Wildlands 2, but yeah. We'll see.
So when you get intel off these papers, why do you only get one?
I don't know. I don't know why you have to select the intel to gather.
Does the paper change, or is it like Inspector Gadget where it self-destructs, or like what happens there?
I don't even know.
Because sometimes when you meet people and you can ask them for intel, you can ask them multiple times.
Right.
But the paper, which you would think would just...
You'd also think you could just
it either
take
has
one
the information,
photo
it either has the information on it or it doesn't.
Right. And either you took a photo of it or you didn't. Yeah. I don't get it at all. I have no idea what they were thinking there.
I look forward to the Terminator event, which inevitably will probably happen.
Because it's happening every
other game. I don't know if you saw, they put a trailer out for the Mortal Kombat, for the Terminator
I saw
Mortal
it
Kombat.
just as I walked out today.
I don't know if I've ever heard a worse Arnold Schwarzenegger impression.
And he chose the guy.
Yeah.
They let him choose the impersonator.
Does not,
maybe that's the problem.
Maybe that's not.
He doesn't want an impersonator
that
or he doesn't want an impersonator that makes him sound like dumb or whatever.
I think that's the problem with this one. I think he does sound dumb.
Oh.
Like I think he does. He sounds like it's like, Oh, we'll get I mean, it sounds like a halfway between like a Stallone impression and a Schwarzenegger
Oh, really?
impression. Weird. Maybe it's what he hears in his head. We all hear our own voices different in our
That's how they
heads.
got published. Or like right as I was
It's too
walking out
low.
the door.
That's the thing. It's too low. But you hear your voice is lower because it resonates through your head.
How funny is it that he can't do his own voice work anymore? I mean, like, wait a minute. You had to choose a stand-in for you?
Well,
like,
it probably cost too much.
Really? But they paid him to pick the other guy?
I'm sure that's less. You're already. I mean, it might even be part of the deal when you license his image.
Right. Yeah.
But like
and his voice, that's extra.
But to pay him for voice, I'm sure it was extra.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
All right.
Someone probably pays that man to breathe every day.
All right, it's time for our trailer of the week. Look, if that trailer had come in early enough, it absolutely would have been the trailer of the week. But like I said, it literally popped up on Sifted the minute I was walking out the door to come here to the studio. So that is not our trailer of the week this week. But we have another, I believe, really good one. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, I feel like we didn't really know a lot about the plot. We had kind of like a rough outline and some bullet points. But this week, they finally released a story trailer for it, which kind of tells the tale to come. Let's roll it.
Hurry!
Who are you people?
Okay, shut that thing off and grab some seat.
I know you don't trust me. But we have a common enemy and a common cause.
He's searching for something. Something very precious to the Empire.
We're done hiding, Cal. Are you with us?
We're in.
All right, where we going next?
You can't save them. No! Not from the Empire. Not from the dark side. Not from me.
All right, Matt, so what do you think, man? This game has been put through the ringer over the last, 6 or 7 months.
Looks great to
It
me.
looks like it's running into form to me.
Yeah, and the combat looks. I think people are giving it not nearly enough credit for what they're doing with the combat.
I think part of that is Respawn's fault, though. Like, it showed that big chunk of gameplay, but it never showed in all that time. It never really showed, fast-paced, I don't know. Everything felt slow and kind of clunky. Not that anyone's played it, but I'm saying watching it just felt like it was very kind of contrived and I don't know. It didn't feel like it was very dynamic, I guess, is what I'm
I don't
getting
agree with that at all. I think that attitude is why they don't show gameplay demos anymore. It's an early level. It's not supposed to be the most intense thing you've ever seen. It's supposed to be a demo of what you can do in it, and I think they accomplished that. And if people want to misinterpret that, that's their problem. But they're wrong, and that trailer helped show it, and the final release will show it too. There's more to that combat system than whacking things with a Nerf bat.
Oh, I
promise.
absolutely know that. Look at where it's coming from. I believe that.
Yeah.
But I just think the pacing of the combat, what they showed initially, it just didn't have a whip to it. It just seemed like everything was very deliberate and it almost felt like
I would not be surprised if that is the first thing you do. What we saw the E3 era demo, I would not be surprised if that was the first real level after the tutorial stuff.
Right, so that goes back to what I was saying, where I think it's Respawn's fault that this game's reputation is where it is right now, because it chooses what maybe EA was heavy-handed and said no, we're showing this. I don't know.
I don't think it's EA. Lucasfilm, I guarantee, is calling all the shots on that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they don't know what makes a good game demo one way or the other.
And for the record, I'm still very excited for this game. I'm not one of the people who's like, oh, now it sucks. I'm not feeling like that at all. I still am really excited to play it.
Yeah, I'm into it. I like what they're showing with I love the little robot. I like the Inquisitor. I can't remember her name. but she looks nice and scary. I like that thing at the beginning where she almost cuts through the door.
Yeah.
And the one woman is just like looking at the burn on the inside of the door where it almost got her. Like, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
I agree.
great.
Yep, I think it looks awesome. I'm excited for it. And we have a mega ton of questions in here. We do have a little bit of extra time for this episode, so we'll try to get to a bunch of them. ETH Demon. Have you seen the Pokemon stuff revealed by Game Informer? Also, they are very much going with the soccer theme with 18 gyms split between major and minor leagues. I did see.
I scrolled past it. I didn't read it all. I mean, Pokemon's also one of those things where I'm like, look, I already pre-ordered it. Like, I don't need to be convinced any further.
I mean, the only story that I really saw, honestly, was that there's autosave, which is a huge change for Pokemon.
That's very different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's huge. That's one of those things that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is.
There's something today about how you can use your favorite Pokemon in, like, competition.
Oh, really?
Which might explain why they've not done the full national Pokedex. Because there's more balancing that would need to happen there. I don't know. I still feel like eventually they will get the full dex in there, either as an update or as the Ultra Sword and Shield.
Are you going to pay for it?
Probably. I got all the other Pokemon games. Why not?
From Veritas, seeing as there was a backlash from not being at E3 and Jim Ryan being very anti-crossplay, do you think Layden was forced out over disagreements about PlayStation's future? Possibly not wanting to do live press shows or caving to crossplay demands.
There is no way that was important enough to get someone at his level.
I don't think Layden even honestly cares about that crap.
No.
Like, I think he cares about when he has to because he's the face and he has to go out and explain.
He has to do the thing. Yeah, but Layden's job is very high level corporate business strategy, positioning, and planning. Like, none of that is anything related to what he does.
Yeah. There are minions like 4 rungs below him that handle that stuff. So, yeah I don't think it has any effect on it at all. Justin Horman, at this point, what do you think is most likely to happen? 1, the Uncharted movie will release next December as currently planned, or 2, the movie's release will be delayed until the following year or later, but Sony will still push to eventually get it out. 3, the project will get canceled, or 4, something else.
Definitely 2 with an outside chance of 3. There is no way that thing comes out next December because Travis Knight just got assigned to it. Like, you can't make that movie in a year.
What is it?
And
The
2 months.
6th?
He's the 6th director to be assigned to it. He's a good choice. Travis Knight is a good choice if they stick with him. But I don't think they'll cancel it, but there is a non-zero chance they'll cancel it because they've just been grinding away at it for so damn long.
My choice is number 3. The project will get canceled.
I don't think they're willing to do that just yet. Like, they really want to get that PlayStation Studios thing off the ground. If only to, be able to show that Sony can output movies that don't suck without the help of Marvel, but who knows what's going to happen. Travis Knight is a really good director. He made the only good live-action Transformers movie.
Yeah, but will he stick around? Like, nobody sticks around on this project.
He's
They
stuck
sign
around.
people up, and 60 days later, somebody else is gone.
This man, it has never been that short. But like,
I don't know.
Trachtenberg
This
lasted
last
a year.
one.
Trachtenberg lasted like almost a year.
I don't think it was.
I think it was. He was on it for a while. I mean, also this just happens. Like, people go on.
6 directors though?
Not 6 directors, but I mean that's going back like years and years to when Scorsese wanted to make something that was completely unrelated to. Was it Scorsese?
Yeah, I think so.
We want to make basically a movie about a pawn shop,
right?
Or something like it was like okay,
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's for the best probably that he's gone. Let's just be
right.
honest.
But like it's this happened a lot of times. Like this stuff happens and you don't know about. I mean, Gemini Man just came out. Gemini Man's been floating around Hollywood since 1995.
Yeah.
Like stuff takes a long time if you can't quite find the angle on it and they're not sure about it. And sometimes they spend so much money on these things that like it costs more than just making the movie bad in the first place. But I don't think they'll cancel because they're considering this sort of their flagship launch for this new studio situation, and having to cancel that would look really bad to both shareholders and the industry. So I think they will get this thing made hell or high water, but and Travis Knight can see stuff. I mean, Travis Knight is a patient man. He works in stop motion.
It definitely takes a certain
he'll get there.
kind of person.
I think he'll get there, but it won't be next year. It might push to, but again, you can't really push to December after that because then you're up against Avatar. The release date will definitely move to 2021 somewhere in there. I just don't know where. I would say maybe you dump it in October, almost. I don't know. I don't know where you. I know what you do with that. I wouldn't make that movie, frankly. I think the time has passed. and Nathan Fillion's too old now. I mean, nothing against Tom Holland. Tom Holland's a good pick for whatever you want to do, I think. But
AJ the Legend Watson. I think you have a new name. It used to just be AJ the Legend. Any thoughts on Gearbox's response to Troy Baker's quote-unquote wouldn't go union comment?
I mean, it explains it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Union is also generally more expensive, so we are talking about the company that wouldn't pay their ex-VP to come back.
I mean,
and
they're
voice,
being sued by like 3 different people.
Wouldn't
right
come back
now
and
for...
to voice Claptrap. So sure,
it doesn't surprise me at all. Gearbox seems cheap.
Also,
Let's just be honest.
Troy Baker's not going to lie about the union. I promise.
Yeah, why would he do that?
Yeah.
He works on so many other things. Like,
yeah,
it's Gearbox again being like minor leagues.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Like, you hire, if you're going to work with someone, you hire all union. Or you don't.
Yeah.
If you want to work with talent of that level,
it's
you go union.
It's like Telltale can hire Troy Baker, but Gearbox won't.
Yeah, what
Come
the
on.
hell? It's insane. Gearbox, again, screws up.
Why wouldn't you want Troy Baker in your game no matter what? It's like,
I don't know.
He's such a prestige name.
It doesn't cost that much.
No.
It's crazy.
In comparison to what that game costs total, nonsense.
Here's one from Headingham J. Elizabeth Warren has plans to break up large corporations that threaten to become or have already been deemed monopolies. Hypothetically speaking, were this to eventually reach the video game industry, how do you see this affecting the smaller companies who have already been acquired?
It wouldn't.
I don't understand the question.
They're talking about breaking up monopolies or antitrust in the game industry, which isn't a thing.
Yeah, there isn't any.
There isn't one.
Yeah.
The closest you could get would be like Sony owning all the different companies that are like game stuff and movie stuff and whatever. But they don't
not
own
even
enough
close.
of the market to be worth anything.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the monopoly thing that people don't seem to understand what a monopoly is. Like, to use Disney as an example, which gets probably brought up the most on YouTube these days as a monopoly thing. No, it's not.
It's not even close.
It's not, because
you have to control all chains.
They have not just chains; they have to control the means of production. Like, if you couldn't make a movie without renting the equipment from Disney, that would be a monopoly. Yeah. If Disney owned all the distribution channels to theaters, that would be a monopoly. And that, in fact, is what the studios had in the quote-unquote golden age of Hollywood back in the 40s and 50s, until they broke up the studio system and said that studios can no longer own the theaters.
Yep.
So that's why theater chains grew up. You know, when our generation, when we grew up, we had the multiplexes and the theater chain. The reason those grew up was because now you could run theaters and not be a movie studio.
Right.
Where that's why the movie studios would run those big boutique movie palaces, because they wanted to present their movies in the most gorgeous and sumptuous and high-end way possible. I mean, we're talking about a business that used to say, if you don't price out some people, there's no prestige to it. So you had to make the tickets more expensive on the road shows, to the point that some people couldn't afford to go, because if everyone could go, where's the desirability? That's the mentality of the industry you're talking about there. So
there are no monopolies.
There are no
monopolies.
There's nothing even close to that in video games. So that would never touch anything like that.
Yeah, don't sweat it, man.
You're talking about, pharma and oil stuff. I mean, Warren is after the big industries, not
like that,
not
like
entertainment.
oil
She's not after Sony.
Now to the real question. This is from AJ the Legend Watson. Actually, the last question was from Headingham J. This is another one from AJ the Legend Watson. Now to the real question. What did Mr. Kyle think of the Triple Force Friday stream? Does he have plans to get any of the products which release Friday, October 4th?
I did not watch it.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
It was the reveal of the new merchandise for the Star Wars movie.
Oh, okay.
So like the first wave of Rise of Skywalker merchandise comes out on October 4th. I don't plan to get anything. I don't really collect Star Wars stuff anymore.
You're done, huh?
Except for Galaxy's Edge lightsabers.
Did the prequels kill it for you?
Oh, no.
Because it did for one of my friends who was a collector.
I don't hate the prequels. I think the prequels are below average films, but overall I think they're fine.
It wasn't about the movies. It was about that he bought all the merch, and it's now not worth the plastic it's made on. Yeah. So he doesn't collect anymore. He was like, I'm done.
The flood of Episode 1 merchandise, remember when that was the first time they really did a big midnight launch for toys for anything?
Yep.
The flood of Ep 1 merchandise that did not sell changed how toy distribution worked, because the toy retailers were stuck with so much unsold. There were so many Chancellor Valorums on shelves that no one ever wanted, That
surprise.
And this actually was a problem later for me. In not anymore. Things have changed again because of the end of Toys R Us. But for a long time, that was a problem collecting Transformers, the ones that would be at retail, because stores would order one case, and a case generally had 8 figures in it, 2 of each. And if you didn't get there first,
you didn't get it.
Especially when you had a girlfriend who also wanted them. Basically, we needed a case.
Yeah.
We needed our own case.
Yeah.
And if we didn't get there and find it right as it was put out, we didn't get them. And a lot of times they would never order a second case of a wave, and the next thing you'd see 2 months later, you'd see a new wave. And that was it. You missed it.
Yeah.
Now they changed it after Toys R Us went down. They changed it. You can pre-order all retail stuff that Hasbro makes through their own online store. No problem. And I have everything pre-ordered that I want from the retail chain going out like 7 months. So I never have to worry about hunting down stuff in a Target ever again.
Right.
But it was the initial paranoia, the 10, 15 years of paranoia about being stuck with unsold product, so under-ordering all the toy product, comes directly from the episode 1 glut. that
Not surprising.
So this is going to be, when I went, I will probably not even bother with the Friday release thing, because when they did Last Jedi, I actually did go over to the Target near me to see what the deal was, if anything was going on. And the only thing I would have been interested in would have been like the actual the Black Series, like 6-inch figures. They got one case of them for the big midnight launch. There were 300 people in line. They got one case of them, and the first person bought all 8. That was it. It was over. Everything else was just like plastic lightsabers and like
the crap no one wanted.
Children's stormtrooper costumes. So no, I'm probably not going to even bother. I don't even know if there's anything on there I would want. But right now, I'm pretty much limiting my Star Wars collecting to Galaxy's Edge lightsabers and the occasional Hot Toys 12-inch figure. I don't really do the mainstream retail stuff anymore. I think they're weird looking and cheap, and they put too much eyeliner on the Luke figures. I don't know why they started putting eyeliner on the Luke figures.
Next question from Vincent Sifted. PlayStation Now is dropping its price to $10 a month and $60 a year, and adding some big games like God of War, Uncharted 4, and GTA 5. Combined with the PS4 downloads, is that enough for it to compete with Game Pass and Stadia on the streaming side?
I'm not convinced that competing with Stadia is a thing anybody needs to do yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Compete with Game Pass. Streaming is just a different beast. Like I am never going to subscribe to PlayStation Now. I don't care what it drops to.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with Game Pass when Game Pass lets you download the games.
Yeah.
You're not streaming the games.
And tends to have stuff that's, Gears.
Yeah.
Is PlayStation Now going to let me play Last of Us 2 on February 21st?
Nope.
Don't think so.
Nope. And until they do that, they're not going to compete. Freeze frame rate. Do you think a demo would help change people's minds on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order?
Maybe.
It depends on if it's good.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
It could change their minds, or it could give the game away, right?
Yeah.
It's I don't think it's going to be bad, but I don't know. Does EA do that? Does EA do demos?
Not a lot. It's done betas before.
Here's the thing. The people who are skeptical or hating on the game are a tiny, tiny minority of game nerd hardcore fans, and they are not the people that are going to make this thing a big hit. The people who are going to make this thing a big hit are the people who are going to be like, oh, look, Star Wars, buy.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't need to put demos out for those people.
No. You don't. Because
all
they would know they existed anyway.
Yeah, all you need to do is put the commercials on NBA and NFL games and,
Yep.
and the World Series, maybe, because that'll be in October as well. It couldn't hurt with sort of the core audience, but I don't know.
One last note: Trachtenberg was brought in on the Uncharted movie in January, so
9 months.
8 months ago, something like that.
Long enough to have a baby,
Yep.
but not long enough to make a movie.
Yep. Vincent says, remember, PlayStation Now lets you download PS4 games now on PS4. He's right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can download stuff now and play them on your console.
Well, that's
that pricing, $10 a month, that's what it's going to have to be at to compete.
Well, that's improvement, but you still have to be more. Yeah, it has to be something that's not a year old.
Yep.
So.
Yep, for sure. Timeliness makes a big difference for sure, and that's why that's why Game Pass is doing so well, because it has day and date first party stuff, not just third party, first party stuff. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Nope. All right, so that's it for GameFace episode 184. Just another friendly reminder, please subscribe via Twitch Prime. We really, really need the help right now. Just being honest with you guys, we really need it. And I think for most of you guys, it's turning over, and I know it's rolling, but we always try to say at least once a month and remind you guys to go and do that. We appreciate it. Anybody who subscribed via Twitch Prime on the stream, we appreciate it as well. Those of you who are just tuning in late, we had a big problem with GameFace today. The TriCaster crashed. I'm actually kind of curious whether we should post this second half of the show by itself or whether you guys want to wait what could be quite a while to get the whole show together, because I'm going to have to go through some crazy file conversion over the next couple days here to try to salvage the episode. So, oh, wow. Nexus 6 Baddie just gave everybody subs, which is, I don't even know how that's possible, but
I don't know.
What does that mean?
It means he gifted a bunch of subscriptions to the various people in there.
Wow, that is awesome. That's really awesome.
I didn't actually know you could do that, but that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. Eric Scott asked, what happened to the Saturday call-in show? It is on hiatus right now because there's a bunch of reasons why it's on hiatus. One is just the interest and participation wasn't worth the effort that I'm putting into it. And the other part of it right now is that we have a ton of games to play and review for Q4. And it was taking up a whole day that I was normally using to play games. So probably what's going to happen here in the next week or so is I'm just going to start streaming games. And hopefully it'll be games that I'm playing for review and I'll be allowed to show them to you. But regardless, I'm going to try to kill two birds with one stone with our streams going forward as far as playing games that I need to be playing for evaluation and hanging out with you guys and doing streams with you guys. Today's high score is not canceled or gone for good. It's just kind of put on the back burner right now because we're in Q4 and there's just way too much stuff to get done for me to have to spend the time to set up that show and then do that show and then publish that show and then promote that show. You got it. So anyway, that's what's up with today's high score. Look for more streams from us coming very soon. What do you think, Matt? Do you think I should try to just put this second half of the show up first, or?
I don't know. I would maybe do a Twitter poll.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea, actually. Yeah. So maybe go to our Twitter page. We're going to put up a poll, and you can tell us whether you want to wait. It'll probably be a full day at least for the whole episode to go up, or whether you want us to just post the second half of the episode, provided that file also doesn't get corrupted. But I have a great day and night ahead of me. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for anybody who is subscribed via Twitch Prime during the show. Thanks to the folks who are watching on YouTube. Thanks to people listening on iTunes, who are listening on Google Play. You folks can also help us out with Twitch Prime. It makes a huge difference for us. I don't know how much more I can say it. It makes a big difference. It kind of is the difference right now. So if you guys could go and do that, we'd really appreciate it. You guys have yourselves a great day. GameFace is up and out.